My friends in the audience, members of the public, if we would bring ourselves to order, thank you. First order of business is to ask Acting General Counsel Paige Graves to provide an update on quorum for the record. Paige.
Yes, good morning. There is a quorum. I just want to remind everyone, because of our protocol today, that everyone keeps their masks on, but if you are speaking, you are entitled to take the mask off when you're speaking.
Thank you, Paige. Before we hear from public speakers, we have the customary safety announcement.
Your safety is of foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen to the following instructions. In the event of an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and 911 should be called. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway or stairwell D down the hallway past the elevators. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. Thank you and have a safe day.
Thank you. With that, may we hear from our public speakers?
Good morning and welcome to the MTA Board's meeting public comment session. Today, for the first time, we will hear from public speakers both remotely and in person. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would also like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. There will be visual and audio cues at the 30-second mark. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Bradley Brashears.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. What a December to remember for transit and for transit riders. Announcement of the agreement that will move Penn Access forward and finally bring commuter rail to the Northeast Bronx, coupled with critical repairs to the East River tunnels that will keep Long Island Railroad, Amtrak, and eventually Metro North trains running through those sandy-damaged portals, thanks to Senator Schumer. Newly designed Bronx bus routes that take into account the needs of the borough's riders. New discount fare pilot programs on commuter rails and on subways, buses, and Staten Island Rail that will save riders time and money, and the adoption of a budget that will hold fares flat, at least for now. Only Freedom Ticket could make it better. The budget you'll be voting on also tells the tale of red ink down the tracks, however, and we know that federal funding through CARES Act, CRISA, and ARPA will only take us through 2024-25 without service cuts. We appreciate that Governor Hochul has made that commitment to riders. It's also a commitment to our region's recovery. The best way to get riders back on board is by providing safe, equitable, reliable, and affordable service. Waiting at a bus stop or on a subway platform for 20 minutes or more, or for an hour between Metro North or Long Island Railroad trains, is a sure way to drive riders to other modes of travel, including driving. That's the wrong message to send as congestion pricing hearings continue. We need all the support we can get at home and in Washington. We also appreciate that we won't see fare hikes for at least the next 6 months. That should help light a fire and spur ridership. However, trying to squeeze $17 million from riders in mid-2022 would be like throwing water on that fire. Surely the MTA or state can find $17 million to keep fares where they are through the end of the year at least. Ongoing, sustainable operating funding will keep us from having the same Groundhog's Day conversation, and we're committed to working with you and our elected officials to find a way to pay for transit, the essential service that keeps our essential workers and our region moving. Thank you and happy holidays.
Recording in progress.
The next speaker is Bradley Brashears, followed by Councilmember Vanessa Gibson.
Good morning, board members. I'm Bradley Brashears, Planning Manager at the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. Before the board today are fare discount options, which we largely support, including reductions of 20% off 20-trip peak commuter rail tickets and 10% off monthlies, fare capping thanks to Omni, and expanded city ticket options. These are slated to go into effect in March and run for at least 4 months, maybe longer. These options should help get riders back on board, a key goal of these ticket type introductions. We are, however, disappointed that Freedom Ticket, aka Atlantic Ticket options, were not included. They offer more flexibility, including during peak times, and include transfers to subways and buses, while City Ticket does not. In addition, we're confused. Will City Ticket current weekend fares remain at $4.50, or will it increase to the weekday off-peak option of $5? It's essential that riders know what their options are and how they can get the least expensive ride, or this experiment is doomed to fail. We assume that the Atlantic Ticket will remain in effect, but again ask for clarity. Its downside, same as City Ticket, is that it's only valid the day of travel. Atlantic Ticket is not available on e-Tix, but since alternate ticket types will be added to e-Tix, this is the perfect time, long past time actually, to add it to e-Tix to open its use to more riders. Atlantic Ticket has attracted riders and has produced revenue gains for the Long Island Railroad. Also, many systems, including our own, have restructured and reduced fares with free transfers between modes, gaining both ridership and increased revenues. We see the City Ticket expansion as a baby step in the right direction of Freedom Ticket and will continue to push, pull, and call for its broader implementation. Thousands of Southeast Queens commuters have been able to reduce their once 2+ hour one-way commutes down to 45 minutes or less in many instances. It's time for the rest of Queens and the Bronx to have the same access to lower and more flexible fares that go beyond the options before you today. The capacity exists. The time for Freedom Ticket is now. Pilot programs are designed to see what works and what does not work. Adjustments can always be made. Thank you.
The next speaker is Councilmember Vanessa Gibson, followed by Matt Camper.
Why don't we go ahead to Mr. Camper?
The next speaker will be.
Good morning.
Nope.
I apologize. Good morning, everybody. It's been a while since I last spoke on this board meeting, but I'm here this morning to talk about the LIRR fares structure that is being proposed today. I am in complete support of this fare structure. Discounts going to monthly riders, especially the fact that board members have been discussing this for a while, where riders aren't going, workers who need to use the railroad don't go in, 5 days a week like they used to pre-pandemic. And they go in 2 or 3 times a week. And I completely agree with the 20-tip ticket. I think it is a late step in the right direction. And we got to encourage ridership. We got to encourage riders to come back on the system, reduce congestion on our roads. And, if you haven't used the Long Island Railroad in a while, why don't you give it a shot? Get out of your cars, use mass transit. It's definitely a great way to get around, get to work if you need to get into Manhattan, whether it's 2 or 3 times a week. And this 20-trip ticket, I think it's going to be a great thing for riders. And I think it's going to be a win-win for all Long Island riders. Also, as far as the New York City fare structure, I completely am also in support of that. You got riders in Northern Queens, Southeast Queens, who, for example, don't have that luxury of having a subway trip nearby. And sometimes it may take 2 or more hours just to get to Manhattan from whether you live in Southeast Queens, Northern Queens sometimes, for example. And this is going to be reduced travel time for those riders. I think this is a great way. For example, you ride from Auburndale to Penn Station. You ride from Queens Village to Penn Station. And as far as what Bradley said before me, I
Please conclude your
completely
remarks.
agree on this. I think it's time that we encourage the Atlantic Ticket to be on.
The next speaker will be Felicia Park Rogers, followed by Jason Anthony.
My name is Felicia Park Rogers, and I am the Director of Regional Infrastructure Projects for Tri-State Transportation Campaign, a policy and advocacy organization working for better transit and transportation across New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. I would like to congratulate the MTA on its successful first round of public outreach as it implements the environmental assessment on congestion pricing. TSTC participated in 13 of 15 hearings across the region, offering testimony in support of congestion pricing at 12 of those hearings. We kept a tally of comments in support or opposition to the plan at the hearings, and we're pleased to see that a majority of the comments were in support of the plan.
Recording in progress.
The most recent hearings had an updated presentation representing questions and concerns to environmental justice communities. We are pleased that MTA is doing substantive analysis in this regard as it prepares the EA. We hope that members of the public will continue to voice their support for and submit comments regarding congestion pricing during the public comment period. We are also pleased that the MTA has announced implementation of a fare capping pilot program on the Omni system. This is an important step toward fair implementation, and we encourage the MTA to broaden the pilot program in every possible way. We would like to voice our support additionally for the recent proposal from PCAC for expansion of the Freedom Ticket fare options. The Freedom Ticket is a vital tool for equitable fare and rail access and making it possible for more riders to come back to the system. We were excited to see Interim Chair and CEO Jana Lieber at the recent rally for better bus service in the Bronx and look forward to continuing to work with the MTA to implement a bus redesign program that places the needs and concerns of riders front and center. Lastly, we encourage the MTA to reach out to the New York congressional delegation in full support of the pending Build Back Better bill. This bill contains urgently needed operational funds for public transit. It has the potential to bring upwards of $3 billion in operating funds to the MTA over the next 5 years, funds that are desperately needed to improve service.
Please
and
conclude your
reliability
remarks.
for riders. I'm almost done. Thank you. The better the system runs, the more people will return to the system. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to a productive 2022 with exciting opportunities ahead for New York's recovery from the pandemic.
The next speaker is Jason Anthony, followed by John Ferretti.
Good morning, MTA board members, especially to Lauren Schwartz and Robert Mojica. Speaking this morning right in front of the Bowling Green subway station on the Lexington Avenue line. Jason Anthony from Amazon Labor Union and current Amazon employee from the Staten Island warehouse at JFK 8. Since this past Friday, the S40 and S90 buses have been detoured to the Amazon's parking lot with no explanation provided to those who use the buses due to so-called congestion. We want to know why, and no posters have been, let's say, announced in St. George Terminal. And why is it that Amazon is lying to the riding public that the New York City Transit has been contracting 55 riders, that yours truly has been hearing from 2 dispatchers that there's crew shortage? And we want the media to go out to Staten Island. This is an urgent matter because we don't want Staten Island to be no more the forgotten borough. And again, we want the NYPD to follow the TSA mask mandate because this is a serious matter. The mandate has been extended into March of next year. I will be policing them like always, and I will see you guys in January.
Thank you. The next speaker will be John Ferretti, followed by Canela Gomez.
Hi, my name is John Ferretti. I am a New York City train conductor and a Local 100 Executive Board member. I'm here today speaking as a rank and file member of TW Local 100, a union that, despite suffering the deaths of over 100 union members to COVID-19 and suffering illness from tens of thousands of infections of our union members and our families, has been repeatedly attacked and served up as a scapegoat by Mayor de Blasio, Governor Cuomo, and the very MTA bosses who treat our work as essential but our lives as expendable throughout this crisis. Their latest attack on transit workers is their lying hit piece published in the December 1st New York Daily News, which cries crocodile tears about the supposed $100 million price for COVID-19 testing of New York City transit workers, which was already paid for by the federal government. This news article is filled with self-serving and politically motivated lies and propaganda from a failed New York City mayor, a disgraced governor, and these same MTA bosses. They all have essential workers' blood on their hands and have some damn nerve to scapegoat transit workers for the social crisis they played a major role in creating. They are all directly responsible for creating the unsafe working conditions that led to the deaths of over 170 transit workers. They conspired to deny our union the most basic PPE like masks and even threatened us with discipline for wearing them. The MTA failed to implement your pandemic plan dated December 2012, which led directly to mass death. The MTA, these incompetent, dangerous leaders kept the New York City transit system open 24/7 as a vector of this deadly disease. They also failed for a year and a half to provide testing at every New York City transit work location. They say they care so much about the importance of transit workers getting the COVID-19 vaccine, yet for more than 9 months since it's been available, it is still not available at every New York City transit work location. And I don't see people being very concerned about the $48.6 billion in triple tax-exempt bond debt owed to parasites on Wall Street on nearly 4% interest over the next 3 decades. And I don't see much concern about the waste, fraud, and corruption at every MTA project. Don't believe for a second their lies about caring about public
Please conclude
safety.
your remarks.
These liars and frauds, they don't care about your lives, health, and safety any more than they do New York City transit workers. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Canela Gomez, followed by Tramel Thompson.
All right. Good day. I'm train operator Canela Gomez. Starting January 1st, I'll be the acting RTO vice president. First, I want to commend y'all on the safety in this building. I see y'all guys take y'all safety very seriously. I wish y'all would take your employees' safety seriously. So one of my main objectives when I take over in January is I want to change the narrative and the ideology of service over safety. I know you guys probably don't believe that's the ideology, but let me tell you, that's how train crews feel. We feel like it's always service over safety, and that is going to be one of my main objectives, to change that thought process. It needs to be employee safety over service. So that's going to be one of my main objectives. In September 2020, an employee, Billy Wright, slipped and fell in 239th Street train yard and died. I'm pretty sure you guys remember that. It was big on the news. Not until I did an interview with News 12 did you guys fix the lights in that yard. I went to actually go inspect that yard, and the yard was dark as hell. And not until the News 12 interview, the lights was repaired. So I'm here to talk about mainly Coney Island Yard. Every month, Coney Island Yard has we have safety inspections from Safety Walks in RTO. And for the past 12 months, really longer than 12 months, every safety inspection talks about these lights. And yet, Superintendent Solomon has not fixed the problem with these lights. Clearly, it's a problem. Patrick Warren, you're the chief safety officer. I don't know the last time you've come to Coney Island Yard to actually inspect the yard other than for a photo op, but I would like it if you would actually come and take a look at that yard and several yards that have lighting issues. In October, a train operator had an incident in that yard, and he was operating in the nighttime. And for him working in this yard that doesn't have lights in the nighttime,
please conclude your remarks.
He was rewarded with a 30-day suspension. So moving forward, unless the safety in this yard and further yards is taken serious, my train crews are not going to be rewarded for operating in unsafe conditions.
Thank you. Please conclude your remarks.
1 second, please. This is very important. It's very, very important. Like I was saying, moving forward, my train crews are not going to be rewarded with 30-day suspension for operating in unsafe conditions. So you guys can take that how y'all want. Have a great day.
The next speaker will be Tramel Thompson, followed by Rachel Foss.
You know, I was really looking forward to a productive 2022 with you guys, but today just reminded me of the contempt you have for the workers. I mentioned that I'm coming to the MTA board on Facebook. All of a sudden, we need vaccine passports to come here. But the same vaccine passports is not needed for passengers to get on our trains, to get on our buses, or into our systems. What are you guys afraid of or want to protect yourselves from that we can't protect ourselves from? Now, like our VP said, we focusing on safety. And safety is very paramount to us. So we're going to start taking trains out of service and stop doing unsafe favors for this company who have contempt for us. Now, we go sponsor these safety acts for some superintendents. One, Paul McPhee, he's running a Gestapo superintendent factory. It's all about punishment. You have Charles Henschke, who back in 2019, a retiree told me he was going to discipline me before I got the discipline. And then all of a sudden, Charles Henschke got disciplined himself for bias activity. But you know what this company does? Leaves him in power. How can he govern if he already had a sustained charge of bias activity? You have Darpan Tawala, who just recently told his superintendents, don't respond to Trammell. No problem. My Facebook get 300,000 views a month. I could go to the media. This is not the kind of relationship I want to have with the company, Craig. It's not. I want to be able to go to my supervisors and tell them of an issue. But since they want to silence me out, I have no problem. Tim Minton, last year on the news, called me a disgruntled employee. We're going to have a safety act and commencement of Tim Minton. There's no way possible this company could go call their employee a disgruntled employee for defending themselves against the attacks of this company. It has to stop. We want to start 2022 on the right foot, and we want to start it right and equitable, not lopsided like this with the company that's up here and we down here. We want an equitable relationship with this company, or we're going to start taking trains out of service. Simple as that.
The next speaker is Rachel Foss, followed by Mr. X.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning. My name is Rachel Foss, and I'm the Senior Research Analyst for reInvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable New York State government, including for authorities like the MTA. With the MTA taking steps to implement the new open data law, including recently posting a job position for the new open data coordinator, it's important that the agency look broadly at how it can be more transparent and proactively release information to the public. As part of its ongoing commitment to transparency, the MTA should be striving to publish far more of its public records online, instead of requiring the release of information via the cumbersome and expensive Freedom of Information law process. To that end, we ask the MTA to publish open data concerning various units of its workforce. This should include vaccination rates for all agencies and their component units, including the MTA Police Department. Thanks to a FOIL request and article from Kevin Duggan of AM New York, the public now knows that the MTA PD, a subset of MTA HQ, has a vaccination rate of 60% compared to other MTA HQ workers who have an 87% vaccination rate. Previously, only aggregate data for all MTA HQ workers was made publicly available. Transparency during COVID is particularly important to build public trust, and the MTA should release detailed vaccination rate information, particularly for workers who interact directly with the public. The MTA should also release workforce availability data and overtime rates for all agencies and their component units, including the MTA PD. Similarly, thanks to the Inspector General's recent report on MTA police overtime, we have more data about the MTA Police Department's overtime rates. Therefore, we encourage the MTA to release this information as open data, along with drivers of overtime, such as absenteeism, workforce availability, sick leave, and injury claim information. Thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to you implementing the MTA open data law.
The next speaker will be Mr. X, followed by David Kupferberg.
To the Long Island and Metro Railroad presidents, the schedules must be available at all stations. I don't feel I should have to log onto the website to view them. That's unfair. To Craig Cipriano, you need to put the cash back in the booths We're tired of some of us are tired of using those damn machines which are constantly malfunctioning. Put the cash back in the pool. John Samuelson asked you to do that earlier this year, and so far you haven't done it. To Jano Lieber, or should I say Harrison Ford, with a smaller head and a bigger nose. You made two mistakes after you succeeded Aunt Patty as the MTA head. On the day the 2021 Book Dominion Parade was held, one of my teammates, Joseph Masigo, turned 59. The B-43 bus ran on Bushwick Avenue because Grandma was suspended due to that parade. There were no posted signs, no announcements. You didn't deploy any employees to help the riders, so I had to do your job for you. I had to babysit you, which I find really annoying. Another mistake, you suspended J train below Hughes Street. You should know by now, if you suspend it below Lorimer Hughes Street, that's a death trap. You should suspend it below Flushing and or Murder Avenue. I can give you a proposal as to what you should do if it can't run across the Williamsburg Bridge. But you can no longer suspend it below Lorimer or Hughes Street. It's a death trap. You're confusing the riders. And there's something, I got a bonus for you. B46 SBS, is there any particular reason why it can't originate at Monsanto Station? Why does it have to originate at Cusco Street Station? B44 SBS and Logo both originate at Monsanto Station. Why was the B46 bus treated differently? Any particular reason why? Are you half-stepping like Big Daddy Kane?
Please conclude your remarks.
I mean, do you think you rule the world like Curtis Blow? I don't get it. You think you have more better blues like Spike Lee? You think you're down with OPP like Naughty by Nature? I don't think so, brother.
Thank you. Please conclude your remarks.
You need to get it together or throw in the towel like the goal upon Arnold Scully, which did for Bob Backlund many years ago. Get it together. Also, remember the town like Michael Jackson.
The next speaker is David Kupferberg, followed by Chris Parker.
I am not against the Bronx Bus Network redesign, but I do have concerns. The elimination of lightly used stops could decrease travel time, but this has to be determined on a case-by-case basis. The volume of the bus stop is a factor, but not the only factor. Sometimes the distance to the next bus stop may be too far. Another is topography. Parts of the Bronx are known to be hilly. Besides, if multiple bus stops are eliminated in a particular corridor, a bus may stop at stop A instead of stop B, saving no travel time. In order for bus stop spacing to be effective, you have to be concerned with passenger travel time, not vehicle travel time. Read my critique of bus stop spacing that I have provided within my original testimony. To claim that there is not enough demand for a direct route along East 233rd Street without a proper analysis is contrary to the goals of a service redesign. My intent is to close service gaps, eliminate transit deserts, and make the city limits less of a barrier between neighborhoods. By the way, there is a mistake in the middle of page 195 of this month's New York City Transit and Bus Committee meeting book and the middle of page 53 of the MTA board meeting book. Northern extension of the BX19 should be edited to northern extension of the BX29. Now direct East 233rd Street service makes sense as per my testimony and diagrams. And if no riders would have to pay an additional fare, three-legged transfers would have to ultimately be approved by the MTA board. The documents presented today show that there are no proposed changes to the tariff connected to the final plan. Should there be such tariff changes, they shouldn't be kept secret. In conclusion, the service plan has dismissed the more comprehensive changes that could have made the Bronx Bus Network redesign final plan a better plan. Thank you.
The next speaker is Chris Parker, followed by Iman Ramad Duster.
Okay, I'm not sure. I see a counter. Okay. Just talking very quickly about peak fares, which have been around since the very beginning, I think, of Metro North, some 30, 35 years now. Maybe it's less than that. Peak fares, I think they've always been around. They've increased revenue on rush hour trains. The intention, I think, being both to discourage people from taking peak hour trains if they don't need to reduce capacity and avoid overcrowding, as well as to provide increased service in the form of peak hour express trains. Until recently, the news has always been that off-peak fares are in effect on all trains until the end of the year. There's never been any mention, though, that come New Year, when peak fares resume, that peak hour rush trains would resume. So it's not very clear what the purpose of peak fares are at this point, except to boost revenue, with basically more money for nothing new. As well as the fact that peak fares have been sold pretty much throughout the pandemic through machines and the mobile app. Recently, I think they reprogrammed the paper machines to stop selling individual peak fares, but the monthly tickets are also peak tickets and are still sold to the machines. And the mobile app still even sells peak tickets, even though within the 60-day validity, they would never be used. There also is no refund for used peak tickets used on off-peak trains. There's no evidence of it. There's no way to form any credits. And I just don't understand, when we bring peak tickets back, monthly tickets, also peak tickets, but they're the only ones that are not transferable. When we start bringing in things like these 20-trip tickets, I really think we really need a monthly off-peak ticket and some more thought into the system that will have peak tickets in general.
The next speaker is Iman Rima Daster, followed by Ben Fried.
Hi, good morning. My name is Iman Ramawi Daster. Yep, I just got married and I will be accepting wedding gifts for the next 3 months. And I am the Access-Ride Coordinator and Campaign Organizer for the Disability Justice Program at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. I'm also an Access-Ride customer and have been since 2010. Access-Ride provides horrible service for me and has through 2017 when I joined NILPI. I would get up earlier and earlier only to arrive later and later almost every day. Then NILPI, together with its partners in the Access-Ride Reform Group, began working together to improve Access-Ride. We pushed for the on-demand service that began in late 2017, and for almost 2 years after that, Access-Ride service was far better than it had been. Then on-demand got bad as drivers weren't getting paid enough for our trips. Once again, I would wake up earlier and earlier and arrive later and later. Then COVID hit. And in the beginning of the pandemic, service changed yet again. The MTA wisely discontinued shared rides, which made trips faster and more reliable. Several months in, though, I barely got a ride from on demand. So I went back to pre-booking, but that got worse. CTG is horrible. And that's 80% of y'all rides. Then this year, the MTA reinstituted shared rides, which added insult to injury. It became hard to even get a ride, and I feared I would contract COVID during these shared trips because of lack of mask compliance, which y'all say you're doing. You're not. I have documentation of no masks by drivers and customers on Access-Ride. Check my Twitter. It got so bad with on-demand and pre-booked trips that I stopped going out for weeks at a time, which, by the way, could only be possible because my office was working remotely. Have you ever tried not to leave your house for weeks at a time? Because it's not easy for any professional, to never leave their house. This month, I've gone back to using on-demand, but with yet another MTA planned shift in service with a change in vendors and my office reopening soon, I fear that I'll go back to being late almost every day. Once again, I'll need to leave my apartment hours in advance when it's dark. I'm sick and tired of sacrificing my rest and, frankly, my life to leave my house hours in advance.
Thank you.
I honestly don't.
The next speaker will be Ben Fried, followed by Satina Robinson.
Good morning. I'm Ben Fried, Communications Director with Transit Center. I'm here to testify in support of the Bronx bus network redesign and to provide feedback on the proposed fare capping pilot. As advocates, we often point out that New York has the slowest bus service in the nation. Well, how can the MTA fix that? The answer is by implementing changes like the Bronx bus network redesign. Once this is implemented, important crosstown routes in the Bronx will take riders on more direct paths to where they need to go. Service patterns will align better with bus lane projects that NYC DOT is implementing, and riders won't have to put up with the aggravation of buses that stop as often as every block. The stop consolidation is a very important piece of the plan because currently many stops are just a few hundred feet apart. In surveys, an overwhelming number of Bronx bus riders say they would like fewer stops, and we would like to thank the MTA bus planners for reflecting that in this plan. Broadly speaking, to improve bus service, we need you, the people who oversee the MTA, to embrace big changes. We fully endorse the changes in this plan, and we encourage the MTA to follow up with ambitious bus network redesigns in the other boroughs. On the fare capping pilot, we're excited that the MTA is using Omni for this purpose. Fare capping promises to expand access to unlimited trip discounts for people who can't afford to pay for passes up front. We strongly urge the MTA to adopt a fare capping system with a 30-day discount, not just a 7-day discount. Our analysis of fare swipes indicates that many riders in lower income neighborhoods have the means to buy 7-day passes but not 30-day passes. The fare capping program has to be structured to benefit them. Thanks for your consideration.
The next speaker will be Satina Robinson, followed by Michael Howard.
Good morning. My name is Satina Robinson. I'm a private citizen. I'm here to speak about Access-a-Ride, the discriminatory and criminal behavior that we're receiving, that customers are receiving. Disabled people are the most vulnerable population in New York City and throughout the world, and it's criminal the way Access-a-Ride is acting. They have brokers now that drive off and leave the customers. I have 2 blind friends that have been left by brokers in the street. Because they're blind, Access-a-Ride drivers don't even get out and help them. So the brokers don't get out and help them. One of them was robbed, and the other one was accosted. Okay, it's absolutely outrageous. There should be no conditions or restrictions on a disabled population other than they share rides. There should be no restrictions. All of those things should be taken off. I can't even imagine that the MTA would sign off on something like that. The people are disabled. And to be restricted and stuff, it's absolutely outrageous. I think that should be taken off. And the most that disabled people should have to deal with is sharing rides. Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone.
The next speaker will be Michael Howard, followed by Michael Ring.
Good morning. My name is Michael Howard. I prefer Mike. Happy holidays to you all. I have a list of stations that needs to be accessible. Court Square, 23rd Street on the E, M lines, on not just one side. It should be accessible on both sides. It needs elevators by the ramp on the Manhattan bound side, and plus the staircase is wide too. You know what I mean, on both sides. So, okay. I'm talking about going from platform to mezzanine on both sides. Well, here's the next station, Briarwood. Briarwood needs elevators on both sides, from mezzanine to platform, just like the outside, just like from mezzanine to street. And I have a few more stations. Parsons Boulevard on the F line, Woodhaven Boulevard, both Woodhaven Boulevards, J and Z and M&R, and also Northern Boulevard on the M&R, and 3 stations that need to be accessible on the 7 line, which is 52nd Street, 111th, and Metz Willets Point. But Metz Willets Point has ramps, but it just needs elevators at some point. Astoria Ditmars Boulevard and Broadway and 31st Street on the N and W lines, and Rockaway Boulevard on the A. Maintenance, I see some cars on the A and C line are still dirty.
Please conclude your remarks.
From the hurricane over the summer. R46 need to be needs renewable heating because I
Thank you.
still
Please
don't
conclude
feel
your
the
remarks.
heat every time I ride them equipment. Thank you very much, and have a great 2022 if I don't see y'all.
The next speaker will be Michael Ring, followed by Krista Simeon.
Hi, I'm Michael Ring. Before you start the clock, I'd like to visually describe myself to anyone who might not be able to see. I'm just a white guy, 58 years old, wearing a green hat and hoodie that says Disabled in Action. I'd like to come here today to talk about stairs, not elevators. Last month when I was here, I asked this kind of hypothetical question. Did anyone come up to the 20th floor today by using the stairs? I don't think anyone did. When I was on my way here, I was taking the subway. I waited for some middle kids to run by. When I walked down the stairs at Grand Army Plaza, I changed trains at Nevins. I took the escalator up here. I really felt great about my ability to come here and join other people being productive in their workplace. You're all coming to work, earning money, doing good stuff. There are hundreds of thousands of people in New York City who cannot go to work because there are stairs impeding their progress on the subway. 25% of the stations having unreliable elevators is useless. People are not in the subway systems who need those elevators. They just doesn't really help. It's kind of silly to think they do. I'm hoping that maybe next month, when you have this meeting, I'm going to take the stairs up here. If anyone wants to join me, I'll be getting here about a half hour early, and maybe you'll know that, it's not easy. You want to go to work, you want to be able to come and go. It's time to make the subway system 100% accessible. There are lawsuits that you need to stop fighting them. You need to make binding agreements to build the elevators, build the ramps, get rid of the stairs, let people with disabilities be useful members of society. Accessoride is unsustainable. We don't want to have to get everywhere 2 hours early or 1 hour late. We want to go to work, like you guys are all going to work. All right. Happy New Year.
The next speaker will be Krista Simeon, followed by CN.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to try not to repeat what's been said about Accessoride. I use Accessoride to get to my full-time job because, as Michael said before me, I don't have the luxury of being able to use the public transit system that we have in this city because it's not accessible to me. I never know when I'll be picked up or dropped off on a day-to-day basis, despite being forced to schedule all of my trips 24 hours in advance and having subscriptions. They mean nothing. They say, okay, well, if your ride is late, you can always get a taxi authorization and we'll reimburse you. But reimbursements take up to 4 weeks for me to get a check if I'm lucky. So now I have a credit card that I took out just for taxis and Ubers to get to my full-time job. Drivers for brokers like CTG pick and choose trips to accept based on how lucrative that trip is to them. I know for a fact that my $20 to $25 trip is paid to them $17 they get paid, whereas if I pay out of pocket to Uber, I'm paying $25 to $30 for that trip. So now my commute to my job that I use to sustain myself is dependent on how much these brokers are deciding to pay their drivers. New York is supposed to be an employment first state. At my job where I'm an essential employee, I manage a supported employment program where I tell people with disabilities that if they can get jobs, that they will get hired, that we will help them. And yet the transportation that they're being told to rely on is half-assed, unreliable, and it exploits the fact that you people know that we have no other choice. So Accessoride needs to do at least one thing right: improve the hold times, get us our reimbursements in a reasonable amount of time. A month is disgusting. I pay over $400 a month on taxis just so I can get to my job on time. Do better.
The next speaker will be CN, followed by Jonathan Beatrice.
Good morning. I'm here to speak about the eHealth On Demand program. Currently, there's 3 vendors, Leap, Limasys, and Arrow, and the eHealth On Demand consumer is told to only choose one of those vendors. I'd like to know what happens if one of those vendors cannot fulfill a trip. Can the consumer still be able to choose another vendor on that day of travel if that previous vendor cannot, provide the trip? Also, could someone look into Limasys because there's an issue that I had on the weekend when I was trying to get to JFK Airport. Limasys told me that they were not allowed to take me to the airport, which is very strange, as Access-a-Ride and other eHealth On Demand vendors are able to do that. Luckily, I was able to find another eHealth On Demand vendor to take me to the airport. I also think, is there a way that there's is there a way that the vendors can hide the price from the drivers so that drivers will pick us up because they see the low price and they don't want to pick us up, basically? I'd like to also know, will any of the $10 billion of the infrastructure plan that was given by President Joe Biden, will any of that be going to paratransit? Also, I'd like to say that adding elevators into subway stations doesn't always make it accessible. As a blind person, if I was I've been trained that if I was to board a subway train, I would have to use my stick and move it along the side of the train and kind of guess whether I'm in between the cars or if I'm actually boarding a train, which is really unsafe. And we have train conductors and train operators right here in the audience. And please tell me, does anyone think it's safe for a blind person to stand in front of a stationary train that's just pulled into a station with their stick, move it along the side, and try to guess if they're actually in the door or if they're between the cars? I don't think it is. That's why it's very important.
Please conclude your remarks.
Keep the eHealth On Demand program going, please. Thank you very much.
The next speaker will be Jonathan Beatrice, followed by Joe Kunzler.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Beatrice. I'm a tower operator for New York City Transit, and I would like to add to many examples of how the MTA's pretending to care about the health and safety of their employees is not going well. When tower operators who test positive for COVID-19 call the MTA COVID-19 hotline, they are taking upon themselves to tell those that they work with that they may have been exposed to the virus because the MTA is not notifying anyone else. So they're doing it themselves. We're left in a need-to-know status until we get a phone call from one of our coworkers or we see a cleaning crew at our work in our tower. Tower operators who tested positive are being told, and this is if they actually get through to the COVID-19 hotline, to go to work anyway if they're asymptomatic or if they're vaccinated. It's like the MTA cares more about putting a body in the tower than our actual bodies, as much as we appreciate not being stuck in a double shift. And 2 days ago, the COVID-19 hotline was down, and as of now, I personally have no update as to whether or not it's back running or not. One of the reasons which is because we have no reception on the 20th floor. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Joe Kunzler, followed by Tamara Morgan.
Good morning, MTA Board. Joe Kunzler here. Thank you for having me today. A couple of things this bright and early morning. You may notice I have my Fund Public Transit shirt on. I'm going to sadly have to discuss COVID-19. The incoming borough president from Manhattan, Mark Levine, has asked everyone to remind the MTA board, because somehow we can't get a hold of your customer service officer, Sarah Meyer, that he is very, very upset about the fact that you have police officers not masking on transit. This is a humongous problem when a lot of law enforcement has sadly bought into vaccine hesitancy. You need to make sure your mask force is out there in force. It would also be nice when someone tries to offer you something to pay tribute to a great New Yorker that you get back to them when they send you a Twitter direct message or they try to send you an email. I'm going to leave it at that because as that individual is considering a run for New York Assembly, and I do not want the MTA in the middle of politics. I think that public transit should be run professionally, should be run based on data and center those who depend on transit and those that work on transit. And that requires fighting COVID-19. And with 30 seconds left, I understand my good friends at Writers Alliance are before you asking for accessibility. As someone who's rode your system, I gotta tell you, the biggest thing you guys need is to fund better elevators and more bus lanes. I sincerely wish you well this holiday season, and I hope for some more accessibility, human to human, and in your system. May God bless you, and may God continue to protect the MTA. Thank you.
The next speaker is Tamara Morgan, followed by Jennifer Bartlett.
Good morning, MTA Board. My name is Tamara Morgan. I'm a young woman who uses a motorized wheelchair to fully function in my daily life. And I'm here to echo the sentiments of everyone who has shared about the unfathomable experiences with Accessoride, in particular the brokerage service. I'm here to tell you about a horrendous experience that I had on November 10th. Where I began receiving calls about an hour and 2 minutes before my actual pickup time that I needed to hurry up and come outside. When I did come outside, the driver refused to roll down the window to speak to me. Once I finally got his attention and he helped me board the vehicle, I thought that it would be okay and I would get to work in a reasonable amount of time. We later went on to pick up 2 other passengers in Queens, which I live in Queens as well. We then drove to Brooklyn, then back to Queens, then to Manhattan. And when we began asking the driver what was happening and where we were going, he began cursing us out, telling us F us, and that he feels sorry for people like us. And I would like to know if anyone has ever experienced an MTA bus driver or subway conductor speaking to them in that matter. Why on earth is that acceptable for us to be treated that way when I am just trying to get to work like everyone else and contribute to the society like everyone else? It is unfathomable the experiences that we continuously have to go through when if I could get on the elevator at my subway station, which is 5 minutes from my home, I would be to work in 45 minutes. But because the elevator is never working, I cannot take the train. So I really would urge you guys to consider our comments and take them really, really seriously. This is unbelievable and it's totally not okay. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Jennifer Bartlett, followed by Nakia Butler.
I'm Jennifer Bartlett. I used to work here. I was hired by Andy Byford to work in the accessibility department. I know a lot about this organization. It's not that hard to run. You can do it. You can make the buses right. You can, what's lacking is inclusion and empathy. I'm gonna tell my story as an employee because I think it is indicative of how this organization thinks of disabled people. I was the only one besides my boss, Alex, on the team who identified as disabled. You've since hired 2 more people who do not identify as disabled, despite being a genius and disabled and loved by many people. I was bullied relentlessly. I vomited coming to work because I had so much anxiety. My coworkers were half my age and just out of college, but despite begging and pleading, this organization would not give me equal pay. I had no benefits. I was only allowed to work part-time, and I had no days off. I was so
Please conclude your
dedicated
remarks.
to this agency, and I did such a good job, but you would not give me equal pay to 25-year-olds
Thank you. Please conclude your remarks.
just out of college. And that's your problem. That's what you think of disabled people.
Okay. We're about to run past our hour. We're going to go. I understand there are 8 more people signed up. We're going to try to get through that group and then bring this to a close. We're going to run a little long on public comments, but 8 more people, I understand. Okay.
The next speaker will be Nakia Butler, followed by Valerie Joseph.
And all. Nakia Butler, a train operator for New York City Transit. I come in peace, but I come to speak my piece. Saturday, November 20th, 6th Avenue on the L line, there were 2 shopping carts on my train. I gave it over to Rail Control, my supervisors, and I was questioned as to what makes a shopping cart unsafe. Well, last year we had a train operator, Garrett Goebel, pass away from a shopping cart that caught on fire, and it caused his death. That's what makes it unsafe. So I'm here to talk about safety. We have to stop moving trains unsafely. Management has to gain more respect for its workers. We are the frontline workers out there every day in hazardous conditions. Rule 33A through G, Bulletin 72-20 states no shopping carts which exceeds the length of 30 inches in length or width are allowed on the trains. It shouldn't even be in the system. So I don't understand why I was questioned by supervision as to how a shopping cart is unsafe on my train, okay? We know that it's cause and effect. We know that shopping carts cause fires. We've seen one die. That's one too many. We're also doing unsafe acts continuously. They're asking us to isolate trains with human waste. We're not supposed to do that without proper PPE. They're asking us to go and investigate packages, unattended packages. We don't know what's on there. What if it's a bomb? What about our safety? We're the frontline workers. We're moving trains. This culture has to change with management and its workers. They need to care more about us, not the movement of trains. Our safety must always exceed everything above that. We must come together as one and stop fighting against each other. I will never move a train again that's unsafe. I will never move a train again that's unsafe, okay? Where's our hazard pay? Where's our hazard pay? We've been out there on the front lines. We demand our hazard pay. Y'all have the money. Give us our hazard pay. Blessing.
The next speaker will be Valerie Joseph, followed by Sasha Blair.
Good morning. My name is Valerie Joseph from Brooklyn Center for the Independence of the Disabled, known as BCID. I'm here today to hold the MTA accountable. You are liable for not making subway stations accessible to people like me and so many others, New Yorkers. We have asked for accessible stations. We have demanded accessible stations. And finally, we had to sue you for accessible stations. Now it's nearly 5 years later since the early 2017 from when we filed our civil lawsuits against the MTA. It's 31 years after the ADA has passed, and yet here we are. No settlements, no long-term commitments from the MTA to make the subways accessible. This is absurd. As someone who uses Access-a-Ride and the subways, I'm tired of being the afterthought. or even not thought of at all at the MTA. It's unacceptable and it's morally wrong. Settle our lawsuits. Enough is enough. I'm tired.
The next speaker will be Valerie Joseph. Apologies, Sasha Blair, followed by Alita Dupree.
Good morning. I'm Sasha. Good morning. I'm Sasha Blair Goldenson from the Elevator Action Group, and I'm here after 5 years after settling this lawsuit. After filing this lawsuit, and 31 years after we passed ADA in this country. People with disabilities still don't have the right, still don't have the ability to ride the subway. Come on, guys, we can do this. We appreciate the MTA's announcement this week about new elevator construction, but that is short-term promise, not long-term commitment. We need a legally binding timeline for full accessibility every single station. It's not right to have stations that are publicly funded, that are part of this public entity. Subway is how people get around New York. Yet we say at some stations, no, these ones, sorry, you can't ride here. We don't have stations that are just for men, that are just for white people, that are just for somebody under a certain age. It's not right, and it's not sustainable to have a system where only 25% of stations are accessible to people like me, to people like the 15 others who have spoken today about accessibility. And these things all connect. The $650 million a year that this agency spends on Access-a-Ride, yeah, a lot of those people would like to ride the subway, as we've heard, but they can't because the stations aren't accessible. These things are a real problem, and if you would make a lasting, legal, binding
Please conclude your
agreement
remarks.
that would settle this case. We're not asking for money. We're just asking for a plan, a timeline to know how long must we wait.
Thank you. Please conclude your remarks.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be Alita Dupree, followed by Jessica Murray.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Jana Lieber and members. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. It's always good to be back with you. How about some Grand Central Terminal? To quote the words of Jerry Rafferty, let's get right down the line. I'm really appreciative of this new announcement with Omni using fare capping. I'm gonna use it. I'm
Why don't we see if we can reestablish contact and come back to that speaker afterwards.
The next speaker will be Jessica Murray, followed by Jennifer Van Dyke.
Good morning. I am the chair of ACTA, the Advisory Committee on Transit Accessibility, which started in 2019 under Andy Byford's watch. We're an 18-member all-volunteer group that meets regularly with the system-wide accessibility team. Byford recognized the value of dialogue between the agency and advocates because of the ideas we bring to the table. A short list includes the J Street MetroTech Station Lab, announcements of elevator locations on platforms, alternate route directions for out-of-service elevators, shortened paratransit call center scripts, and of course, our members also have insights gained through years of professional and lived experience. The relationship between the MTA and the disabled community has never been great, but the lack of trust is worse than ever, which makes it difficult to do this work. It's great to see recent momentum on elevators, but that doesn't square with you spending millions of dollars, yes, millions of dollars, to fight accessibility in court. Why not come to an agreement to solidify your publicly stated commitment to system-wide accessibility? Paratransit hasn't had a leader in months, but everyone here seems to be throwing their hands up and waiting for someone to come in and fix the current crisis. Where is the vision for an integrated public transit network that doesn't treat Access-a-Ride like a red-headed stepchild? No offense to redheads. When Andy left, I wrote an op-ed titled "Pick Up Byford's Accessibility Baton." It's been a rough couple of years, but my message today is the same. Governor Hochul has stated that she wants to take a hands-off approach to the MTA, which gives you the autonomy to lead. I'm asking you to please do everything in your power to settle these lawsuits. I also invite you and your teams outside of system-wide accessibility to meet with ACTA so the system can benefit from our breadth of knowledge. And please recruit more people with disabilities throughout your agency to do this work. 0.6% is an abysmal disability employment rate, considering that we make up 20% of the population. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jennifer Van Dyke.
Good morning. I'm Jennifer Van Dyke with the Elevator Action Group at Rise and Resist. It has been 31 years since the American with Disabilities Act was turned into law. It has been almost 5 years since lawsuits were filed against the MTA regarding accessibility. It is time to sign a binding legal agreement and settle multiple civil rights lawsuits to create a roadmap for 100% accessibility. You will notice that what I'm saying has been said multiple times today. We cannot say it enough because there seems to be no action. I want to give you an example. Last month, November 22nd, a number of us were invited to attend a press conference that Senator Schumer was holding at Broadway Junction in Brooklyn. Broadway Junction is one of the largest subway stations in the system. It is completely inaccessible. You take a look at that station. There are elevated tracks, there are underground tracks. There is not an elevator to be seen. It is impossible to get there if you are a person with disabilities, if you are a parent with a stroller, if you are a traveler with luggage, if you are a worker carrying tools that you have to get to fix the subway. We need that station fixed, and Senator Schumer announced that the federal government was giving the MTA $15 million, and it was going to be earmarked for elevators at that station. We shouted, we cheered, we were delighted. It's good news when elevators are built. But what's not good news is that the MTA continues to pay high-priced lawyers in lawsuits that are dragging on for years and years. What you are is an institution that is a sieve. Money comes in from the federal government and goes out into lawsuits. And we will not stand it any longer. We are tired. Please fix the subways, make them accessible to all. Thank you for your time.
We have two more in-person speakers. We have exceeded the 60-minute public comment period and will have heard from all in-person comments. We will continue to record virtual comments to be provided to the board. The next speaker is Joe Report, followed by Charleston D'Souza.
Good morning. I'm Joe Rappaport of the Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled. I'm here today to talk about three major questions facing the disability community. You've heard from several Access-a-Ride riders about the travails they're facing. We know you're finally taking a few steps, some steps, to get this beleaguered system service in shape, but you've got a lot of work to do. In October, your own data show that 1 in 3 broker rides, which carry most riders, are late by 15 minutes or more, and about 1 in 6 is 30 minutes late or more. This is a horror show. You've heard from several Access-a-Ride riders today, and the city has quoted other riders. One rider said, "I just want Access-a-Ride to do right," but at the moment, they're not doing anything right. Patricia Washington of Inwood said, "I've waited 2 or 3 hours for a ride." She was outside a hospital. It's outlandish the way they leave the patients. She added that she's been stranded enough times that her children often pay for her to take an Uber. It's that bad. It really is that bad, she said. We're pleased also that you've decided to extend the on-demand pilot, which is having its own problems for 4 months, but we urge you to work with advocates and riders to save and expand the program, not trash it as you tried to do in 2019. Second, cutting bus stops should be the absolute last option in improving bus service. There are other options. too often when you cut a bus stop, disabled riders must go much further to get a ride. That's wrong. Finally, congrats on moving forward with more subway accessibility projects, but we know that MTA boards and staff change. For some of you, this may be your last meeting, and we thank you. But now is the time to settle our system-wide and maintenance lawsuits so advocates know that the MTA's commitment will last far beyond your tenures. Thank you.
Next speaker will be Charleston D'Souza.
Morning, board members. Charlton D'Souza from Passengers United. And yet again, on Monday, a person was killed in the subway. Where is the safety, guys? We need safety. We need it now. We need property protection agents. We need more MT police officers in the subway and bring in the state troopers. And we need 300 to 400 social workers. Let's do this. We can do this. I spoke to Lieutenant Governor, and I also spoke with some of the staff at the governor's office on Monday about this. And as far as the discounts for the Long Island Railroad go, it's time for Freedom Ticket to be passed now. The city ticket fare should just be $4.50 or even cheaper. Make it $3.75. And also weekly. Y'all should have a weekly unlimited. But Zone 3, the Atlantic Terminal, that should be in Zone 3 permanently because people going through Brooklyn have to get on the subway to go to Lower Manhattan. So just turn it into Zone 3. As far as the Hollis Station and East New York and also Hunters Point Avenue is concerned, they need elevators. They need to be rebuilt. You guys just got all this money in the capital program, yet that station is falling apart. And also, we need new buses for the Q110 route at Baisley Park Depot. The buses are falling apart. They're a mess. And I just want to say, I want to thank Bradley Bashirs for all his leadership at the PCAC for pushing for Freedom Ticket. And I want to thank this board. Have a Merry Christmas. And kudos to Progressive Action for speaking up for transit workers. I'm so proud of all of them because you know what, guys? The other day I saw a shopping cart on the subway train, and I saw 2 police officers there at 179th Street. So the police, are scared, but at the same time, they have to tell them, you got to take the shopping cart out. We don't want to be mean to the homeless, but at the same time, there's a problem underground. Thank you.
Chair Lieber, we have reached the allotted time for this public comment session. At this time, we ask the remaining registered speakers to stand by as we transition to a separate live recording session. If you are a remote public speaker participating on Zoom, please stand by and wait for further instructions. Good morning. We're going to try to get Alita Dupree back. Alita Dupree.
Thank you. We'll start over. Appreciate it. Chair Jano Lieber and members, Alita Dupree for the record. At least I got to say the most important thing, which was about Omni. And at least you got to hear that before your vote. On to some other things, miscellaneous things. I hope to be back on the system again soon. I did get a new reduced fare Metro card in the mail. So thank you. It's a resource for me. I can buy my reduced fare passes, and it will also serve as a reduced fare identification on the commuter rails, so I can get my reduced fare ticket. So I'm definitely hanging on to that. So thank you. And I want the safest system we can get. Continue to work on ways to manage our fare. We shouldn't be having the physical money around in the system. We shouldn't have it in the booths. There have been some cases of some station agents who were robbed and sadly killed back, I think, in the 1980s. So nobody signed up for that. So we got to be safe and not have money in the booths and on the trains. And ADA, of course, I talk about that a lot. I think we should be aspirational and work toward having 50 stations a year. It's not easy, I know. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow or even next year. And I appreciate the work you are doing to get it going. But we can always do more, because I told you about my times climbing up from the deep subway station. I can do it, but many can't. It's still not easy. So anyway, we have the most successful rapid transit system in the world. I ask that you hold to the great traditions because it is legendary. Have a good holiday. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Miriam Fisher, followed by Stacy Ross.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? I'm muted. I'm speaking as a transportation and disability activist, speaking independently, and hope to bring specific issues to the public radar. I affirm what other disability advocates have said, hoping to get from the MTA legal commitment to the 75% of subway stations that still don't have elevators or ramps, a necessity for people with disabilities, seniors, parents with strollers, those carrying luggages, packages, bad backs, and knees. Also, I would like to ask our new Governor Hochul to appoint people with disabilities to the MTA board and to the Congestion Pricing Traffic Mobility Review Board, people with experience, lived needs of using transportation and facing disability obstacles. Another issue with the federal infrastructure money now available for transit is a revived interest in the Second Avenue subway. Reminder that this first segment was a multi-billion dollar project that took decades. One assurance that subway money won't be eaten up and squeezed out transit money for accessibility and elevators for those who with few other options and transportation choices. An alternative model is light rail, which is cheaper, faster to build, more easily made accessible than digging tunnels. Light rail in New York might be extended past 125th Street, 2nd Avenue to underserved transit deserts in the Bronx, which actually one of the original plans and routes for the 2nd Avenue subway. Our New Jersey neighbor, Jersey City, has extended light rail routes along the Hudson River. European cities such as London and Strasbourg have built light rail. London, in preparation for the Olympics, and underserved and low-income.
Please conclude your remarks.
Low-income and East London. Please put that also on the radar. More subways, more extensive accessibility, but also.
The next speaker will be Andy Pollack, followed by Rosie Roman Cortez.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good morning. So a couple things I'm going to discuss today. Number one, thank you for taking my comments very seriously regarding the service on November 24th. I took advantage of it. I went to the balloon inflation for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and the subway service met my standards. Everything was available, no delays, no suspensions, and I love to see that more often on the subway system. The second matter at hand today is regarding the commuter rail line fares. I know the on-peak for Long Island Railroad is going to return on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. The only flaw that we know is that the pre-pandemic ritual, as I'm going to call it, of putting the on-peak fare for disabled and senior riders from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. needs to stop. And especially for people in the disabled community, that is a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if you are going to overdue, you have to make sure 10 a.m. on week continues pretty much it. Thank you. Have a happy holiday and have a happy new year.
The next speaker will be Rosie Roman Cortez.
Hi, my name is Rosie Roman Cortez. First of all, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share the issues we riders of the SIM 24 on the South Shore of Staten Island are experiencing. I work on 35th Street and I take the SIM 24 bus to and from work daily. I live in Pleasant Plains, which is the community directly outside the gate at the Outer Bridge Park and Ride. I literally walk through that gate to take the bus every day. This residential neighborhood has been developing very rapidly as many new homes have been built, thereby increasing the number of residents. There certainly has been a post-pandemic decline in passengers at the Outer Bridge Park and Ride stop, mainly because of the reduction in schedule. More frequent bus schedules would definitely help alleviate this issue and encourage more riders to use this well-designed park and ride stop. We are all willing to pay the $6.75 bus fare versus the $2.75 fare because of the convenience to get to the city. If the Outer Bridge Park and Ride stop is taken away from us, residents in the South Shore, it would become more challenging for us residents to commute to work. For those who work near the 34th Street area, we ask that you carefully consider our concerns and kindly revisit the Outer Bridge Park and Ride stop as our commutes to work truly depend on it. Thank you very much and happy holidays to all.
Thank you for your participation and comment. This concludes the public comment session. Have a happy holiday season, everyone. Take care.
Well, I want to thank all the public speakers who have attended and given us very thoughtful comments. At this point, I just want to check with General Counsel Paige Graves on our board participation update.
Yes, Chairman. Commissioner Law and Commissioner Mojica are attending remotely and have been attending remotely.
Thank you, Paige. I'm going to give some remarks and then we'll go on to the business of the meeting, if that's acceptable. I want to thank everybody who's joining today, both in person and remotely, for what may be the most eventful MTA board meeting ever. My remarks are going to go a little bit long, but there's so much to do, and as today's agenda shows, we are rolling. The MTA is coming back, and so is New York City. All the things we've been talking about, improving service, bringing back riders, stabilizing MTA finances, executing on the capital plan's core priorities, they've all begun to come together. We've made so much progress bringing riders back. At the outset of 2021, MTA ridership on subways, buses, and commuter railroads was roughly 2.2 million riders a day total. Compare that to last week, when we hit a new pandemic high of 3.4 million just on the subway. Total MTA ridership last Thursday was over 5 million people, more than double where it was a year ago. So how do we keep up the momentum? First and foremost, we have to provide the best possible service. Getting to where we are now on reliability and efficiency has taken heroics from our workforce and our management. You heard Craig Cipriano and Demetrius Critchlow explain on Monday how subway on-time performance and other metrics are actually stronger now than they were pre-pandemic. Train speeds are up compared to 2019, so riders are actually getting where they need to faster, even though because of the lingering effects of the crew shortages, where we have a little longer waits on the platform. But service delivery actually increased for the third straight month in November to 92% because of New York City Transit's success in reducing the impact of those crew shortages. Indeed, with the number of crew-related delays diminishing, we could actually be looking forward to a dramatic improvement in all subway performance metrics very soon, once all the trainees who are in the process of being trained are ready to start work as bus drivers, train operators, and conductors. For example, discounting crew shortages, which, as I said, have been going down, on-time performance in November would have been 88%. That would have been the best month since MTA began recording on-time performance. But we're facing new challenges now. We're facing an upsurge of delays caused by what we categorize as external factors, things like unruly passengers, police actions needed to respond to crimes, and especially incidents involving people on the tracks. This is tragic and it's dangerous. I've directed Construction Development President Jamie Torres Springer to lead a new task force that's purpose that's studying options to address the track trespass problem. And that task force is obviously going to include each of our operating agencies. I've also appealed, I have to say again and again, to the NYPD and to the City of New York to deploy officers onto platforms and into other areas where riders feel vulnerable. And also, apropos of what the last speaker pointed out, to assign more trained professionals to help with what appears to be a growing number of people experiencing mental health issues who are in the transit system. We need the NYPD and the city's help. Increasing NYPD visibility in the system isn't just good policing, it's central to the effort to bring back customers and to revive the city's economy. We know from our latest survey of 123,000 riders that the overwhelming majority, and this is particularly true of lapsed riders, as you heard from Sarah Meyer, the overwhelming majority are concerned first and foremost about their personal safety. Safety and security obviously have a lot of different aspects. First, there are high-profile crimes against our customers and our employees. And I want to put in a word. We heard a lot about safety of transit employees. I absolutely support our unions and our workforce's demand and appeal to the legislature to increase the penalties for attacks on transit workers. It's way overdue. And I really want to say we're going to continue to speak up for that issue as we did in the last legislative session. But also, the recent reports about subway pushings are unsettling to New Yorkers. And I just mentioned the increase in track trespass incidents. All of these things are, in spite of the fact that there are statistics showing that crime in the long run has gone down in the subway system, but all this news about some of these crazy and unsettling incidents is having an effect. And we're also keeping an eye on things like fare evasion, smoking, and mask compliance, the small stuff that adds up, but it can make people feel uneasy about their security as they return to the system. We're looking forward to working with the Adams administration and especially with the newly designated police commissioner to be Sewell. We're looking forward to working with them to increase compliance in the system, not based on theories of broken windows policing, but rather with the goal, which we all share, of making the system feel and be truly safe and inviting to all New Yorkers. Another important tool we have to win back riders is our fare structure. As announced last month, there won't be a fare increase in 2021, and I thank the governor and her team for their support on that issue. Business logic says it doesn't make sense to increase the price just as you're trying to rebuild your customer base. So we're leaving the basic fare alone for now and rolling out a slate of new pilot fare promotions that were developed by our board staff fare strategies working group. Sarah Meyer is going to take us through the details in a little while, but I want to thank our board members for their work on this, especially co-leads David Jones and Rhonda Herman and my chief of staff, Laura Wiles. Amazing work. We've made great progress this year on the capital front. Despite COVID, we haven't missed a beat on our two biggest projects, East Side Access and Third Track. Both remain on schedule to be finished in 2022. And how many mega projects subject to supply chain realities can say they haven't had their schedules impacted by COVID? But our capital program isn't just about mega projects. It's also about advancing key priorities like, as we heard today, expanding ADA accessibility system-wide, modernizing our subway signal system, and bringing our $1 trillion in assets, and that's the value of our system, bring it into a state of good repair. On system accessibility, we've completed 14 brand new ADA stations since the onset of the pandemic. And as you heard from C&D President Torres Springer on Monday, this month's agenda includes plans for ADA improvements at another 26 stations. We're innovating like crazy to accelerate these accessibility upgrades. Our first ADA upgrade under the recently enacted zoning for accessibility provision passed by the City Council, which originated with the MTA. We're starting to get the benefit of that new law, and we're going into the market with your approval today for a new first-in-the-nation public-private partnership that will both add 8 new ADA stations to the accessibility map and also rehabilitate elevators at many other stations. When it comes to subway signals, we're making progress on the 8th Avenue line and the Culver project, and we're nearly done with QBL Queens Boulevard Line West. Today, we're awarding a contract for signal upgrades, CBTC signals on QBL East, the eastern portion of that incredibly important line. More broadly, we're hitting top speed on new awards after the pandemic forced our capital program to take a temporary pause. Next month, after the dust settles, construction and development is going to give us a full accounting, but I'm pretty sure this has been the MTA's busiest quarter ever for capital procurements. We're trying to get ahead of what will certainly be a mad rush for project management talent and construction capacity once money from the Biden infrastructure program starts to flow. We have to get ahead of that. Metro North Penn Station access, our new mega project, is probably the best example of the upsurge in capital program activity that I'm talking about. Today we're asking the board to approve awarding a design-build contract for 4 new stations in the East Bronx, as well as 20 miles of track, new substations, new power systems, new interlockings, new communication systems, new signal systems, everything to turn the existing Amtrak 2-track railroad into a modern 4-track railroad that's ready to accommodate the people of the East Bronx and folks from Westchester and Connecticut who want to go to the west side as well. It's going to transform the East Bronx from a true transit desert into a model transit-oriented community, and it's going to give our Metro North New Haven line commuters direct access to Penn Station for the first time. And just to put a point on it, like the East Side Access Project, which allows Long Island Railroad customers to travel directly to East Midtown if that's more convenient, Penn Access is going to allow Metro North customers on the New Haven line to save up to 40 minutes a day if they're headed to the west side instead of to Grand Central. Really adds up in a human being's life. The funding plan we have for this project, which was brokered with help from hometown hero Chuck Schumer, calls for Amtrak to contribute $500 million to the Penn Station Access Project. In exchange, the MTA agreed to formalize our long negotiated contribution to Amtrak's Sandy-related East River tunnel repairs. All of this requires an amendment to our MTA capital program plan, the 2020 to 2024 capital plan. The details, as you know, are in your board book. However, I want to make it clear, this is not necessarily the final news about the funding for this project. With Senator Schumer's support and the support of all of the Bronx congressionals, the MTA and Amtrak have agreed, in fact committed, to jointly apply for one of the new programs in the Biden infrastructure, created by the Biden infrastructure plan, a $24 billion funding category that was expressly purposed at projects on the Northeast Rail Corridor. If approved, this would further reduce MTA's contribution to the project by hundreds of millions of dollars. Rest assured that once the US DOT starts accepting applications for this new program, we're going to be the first people at the door. As you can tell, we're picking up the pace on all kinds of fronts, and it's been helped by a recent return to work in person at all MTA facilities. Of course, our frontline workers never stop showing up, and God bless them. But now everyone, including the office workforce, is officially back, and there's been a great collaboration going on. New faces are joining the team all the time, and the overall energy at 2 Broadway has gotten a real boost. At every step, safety has been our top priority. Vaccinations are the pillar of our public health strategy. MTA was the first transportation agency in the country to offer vaccinations on site for our employees, and that started back in February. On top of that, we've also set up vaccination centers in subway stations system-wide, where we've given vaccination to more than 36,000 workers and customers. Vaccination numbers among our workforce have kept growing. We now have cards for 73%, and extensive sampling indicates we're actually north of 80%. And as part of our Vax or Test program, we're making it easy for employees to test. Working closely with our partners in labor, the MTA set up more than 700 testing locations across the system. The results are impressive. Last week, we tested 14,000 employees, and compliance with our Vax or Test program, that is, the folks who are vaxxed plus the folks who are tested, has reached 97%. Clearly, the MTA is on an upward trajectory, and we got here in large part due to the tremendous work of one person, CFO Bob Foran. This is Bob's last board meeting before he retires later this month after 11 years of MTA service. He's actually been at the MTA, in the MTA orbit much longer because he was the MTA's banker when he was in the private sector for 20 plus years before he joined full time as the CFO. Now, it's no secret that the MTA is in debt to many because of Bob. Since 2010, he's overseen more than $96 billion in transactions to help the MTA build our capital program and do so much else. But we're all hugely in debt to Bob. As Neil Zuckerman has said in this meeting before, Bob is really the finest CFO in the transit industry. He's one of the finest CFOs in any industry. He's brought the MTA's finances back from the brink at least 3 different times. COVID's just the latest crisis that he piloted us through. During the pandemic, Bob has done everything in his power to make sure the MTA could keep chugging along for New York. I can vouch for this personally because when I was heading C&D, I saw firsthand how Bob's financial ledger domain enabled us to keep progressing all of the ongoing MTA capital work, even though we had so much uncertainty financially at the outset of the pandemic before Congress took action. Now, everyone knows Bob as a calm voice of reason, with only the occasional private outburst of doom and gloom. He has that delightful regional accent, which comes from living so long in the South, AKA the South Shore of Long Island. But we all know about his intensity when it comes to the MTA and his love for this place and its people. So thank you, Bob, for everything you have done. I'm grateful for the chance to thank you, to lead off the thank yous, Bob, but I know there are a couple other folks who want to be recognized in that connection. Neil, you sent me an email?
Yeah, thank you. That, as always, our chair is articulate and I think sincere, so thank you for that, Jano. Bob, you know, there are 2 other probably slightly more famous graduates from the class of 1982 from Harvard Business School. One is Jamie Dimon, who runs J.P. Morgan Chase, and one is the slightly more vilified former CEO of General Electric, Jeffrey Immelt. I think you're sort of in between the 2 of them in terms of success, and slightly, in fact, far better, I think, than Mr. Immelt did with General Electric. But seriously, though, it's been an honor to be around you for now almost 8 years. I think we had, so far as I guess, 7 annual budgets, 3 sets of fair hearings with cold coffee and lots of long breaks, 2 capital plans, and then the unbelievable amount of pressure you've been under. I actually can't believe what a public sector CFO goes through. So thank you for just teaching me from the beginning when I joined this board. Thank you for teaching all of us, being steady, knowledgeable, patient, and loyal. Because I know you don't need this job, but you do it for the service of the community. You do it because you care about your team. And you do it because you care about the state and this region. So thank you for all you've done. You've taught me a great deal. And whoever succeeds you, he or she will have enormous shoes to fill because it's going to be. Has that been formally announced? That's great. Okay, congrats.
We're blessed to have Jay Patel stepping as acting into Bob's shoes. So
excellent.
Jay's amazing. And
well,
thank
that's
you
wonderful.
in advance, Jay, for everything you're doing.
Well, I didn't mean to preview that. But thank you, Bob, very much, and I look forward to seeing what you do next because I'm sure it'll be equally impressive. Thank you, Bob.
So I, too, want to just echo Bob. Congratulations on your retirement. We're going to miss you. But for the last 3 years, you have made understanding the MTA finances understandable, I guess is the right word. But just wanted to echo Jano's remarks and Neil's remarks and wish you well as you retire. But please always take our phone calls if we call you.
Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't be as witty as Neil. Nobody on this board is ever as witty as Neil. I just want to say, Bob, I've been chair of the Finance Committee for a number of years, but I've also served on this board for over 6 years. We've gone through a lot of ups and downs. I like to think more ups than downs, but there's been a lot of ups and downs. That's why I don't ride on roller coasters. But throughout all of this, in my tenure working with you, whether I was chair of finance or in another capacity, I just want to commend you. Your, not just your professionalism, but your passion and loyalty and commitment to this agency is unparalleled to anybody else that's worked here at this agency. We don't always agree on things, and there's been vigorous debates and discussions about different kind of policy items or budget items or financial things. But one thing has always been consistent and reliable is your passion, loyalty, and commitment to do the right thing for this agency. You've advocated always to do the right thing. Your ethics, your moral compass to making sure that this agency never faltered and got stronger operationally and financially is unparalleled and unprecedented in my 6.5 years here being on the board. And when Jano says, how you work with him to make sure that during COVID, our capital program and our important capital projects didn't stop, that's a testament to the two of you. Because without both of you, without there being a team effort, it would not have happened. So I wish you the best of luck in the next chapter and journey of your life. I'm sure it's going to be exciting and busy. But I want to just thank you on behalf of myself and the Finance Committee for your professionalism and your dedication to doing the very best for this agency. Thank you.
There's so much more to say about Bob. We're going to find opportunities to do it, but I'm going to switch topics.
I just wanted to say,
Oh, please, Andrew.
Bob, thank you for everything you've done for this organization, for the incredible ability to make complicated financial transactions accessible to all of us, for your ability to always welcome me into your office to have discussions about various issues. I wish you the best of luck in your retirement and future endeavors. And they might not realize it, but riders are thanking you all over the region for what you've done to keep this place afloat and prospering. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew. Anybody else before I change topics? I don't want to jump the gun again. Okay. So switching to a different subject that I know we all care about. Since I came in a few months ago, one of the things that I've spent a lot of time on in priority is the bus system. I'm passionate about the fact that buses are the engine of equity for so many people in New York. It's the only way that so many people connect to, that is mass transit in many of our neighborhoods, especially in Queens and other areas of the outer-lying boroughs. We've been able to accomplish, I think, some important stuff, but a lot of it has been because we established a real partnership with New York City DOT between the city and the state, a novelty to some. So one of the reasons I've been able to do it, as I said, is because of my old friend Hank Gutman, who's been the commissioner of New York City DOT, and he's here with us today to talk a little bit before Craig gives an update on the bus system as a topic that we all want you to be more briefed on. Hank, thank you.
Thank you, Jano, and I want to say it's a great honor to have been invited to be here and have the opportunity to be here today. One of the things I discovered when I became DOT commissioner is that as important as transportation is, and as much as it touches the lives of all New Yorkers, almost all the meaningful things we want to do require cooperation with another agency or more than one agency, whether it's another city agency like EDC or the MTA or the Port Authority. And one of the challenges was breaking down some of the inherent bureaucratic barriers to that cooperation. And And so I want to thank Jano, who reached out to me, I guess, on his third or fourth day of office, and to Craig. I think the press described us as the three amigos when we did an event in the Bronx. But the origin of that's sort of interesting. We basically pulled together our two teams that were responsible for buses, and buses are the workhorse of the mass transit system and the only mass transit available to vast parts of the city that are underserved and economically challenged. And we sat our two teams down and said, you're one team. I mean, whatever the past was, we don't care. Whatever the issues were, we don't care. You're coming up with a joint agenda of things we can do together. We control the streets, at least to the extent we have the power to enforce our rules. You guys control everything else. And we were going to put the two teams together, come up with a list of priorities, jointly commit to them, and start executing. And I'm delighted to say that that's actually happened. I mean, that there's a lot of work left to do, but there's an agreed agenda, and the teams are working together seamlessly. And if they weren't, I would have hoped I would have heard of it, and I haven't. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm thrilled to be here, and I look forward to Craig's presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, Hank, and thank you for everything you did to make that a reality. Craig?
Yes, thank you. And you know, what's really exciting about this presentation is not Craig's presentation, it's really our presentation, this partnership. So I'm proud to be here alongside Frank Anacaro, Acting Head of Buses, and Commissioner Gutman to take you through our ambitious plans to revitalize bus service. The plan builds upon our August announcement outlining bus priority and network improvements, accessibility and customer engagement, and our transition to a zero-emissions fleet. New York needs a strong bus system to help lead our recovery, and our joint mission is to vastly improve customer experience and to increase ridership. One key reason our chairman, Jano, is so focused on the bus system is equity. The bus system disproportionately serves disadvantaged New Yorkers and communities of color. So providing greater bus service is not just a matter of mobility, it's a matter of equity, and we take that very seriously. 2022 is going to be a defining year for buses, and we are looking forward to working with the new administration to deliver the world-class bus service that New Yorkers deserve. Just to provide us some context, the New York City bus system is the second largest public transportation operation in the country. In fact, bus ridership in New York is greater than the next two largest agencies combined for all modes of transportation. And that relative size is consistent both before and during the pandemic. While buses, like all MTA services, saw a large drop in ridership during the pandemic, they have retained a higher share of pre-COVID ridership than subways. You can see the yellow line here in the chart representing buses tracking over subways for the entirety of the pandemic. Although subways has narrowed the gap, buses' share of pre-pandemic ridership remains higher at about 65%. More bus riders relied on the bus system for essential work or as their mode to perform their essential trips. This just goes to show how important buses are to our ridership. In addition, buses are very nimble, meaning that service can be adjusted relatively quickly and easily without the vast infrastructure costs. For example, at the height of the pandemic, we were able to provide additional bus service on the overnights when subway service was suspended for disinfection. Post-pandemic, being nimble is just as critical as we adjust to ridership patterns and our new normal. Also in this chart, McKinsey projects ridership an addition of roughly 500,000 more riders per day by the end of 2022, or approximately 86% of pre-pandemic. We know buses are especially critical to New Yorkers in traditionally underserved communities. Pre-pandemic survey data shows that 61% of riders who report using the bus as a primary means of transportation are non-white, and 36% have an annual income of less than $50,000 per year. Also, for many New York City neighborhoods, buses are the only public transit option. 98% of New Yorkers live within a quarter of a mile of a bus stop, compared to only 44% who those within of a subway. Bringing riders back to our system is our key priority. We recognize that returning riders need to feel confident that their bus trip will get them where they need to go in a safe, efficient, and reliable manner. We are currently operating a full schedule for approximately 65% of pre-pandemic riders. and we continue to aggressively hire bus operators and expect to be at pre-pandemic vacancy levels in January. And we are very focused on the safety and security of our bus system. But we also know we are facing some very tough challenges. Operating on shared streets in an increasingly congested city is a constant battle. As you can see from this chart, relative bus speeds in other major cities, it is very difficult to move buses quickly on New York City streets. While these are pre-COVID numbers, we are fast returning to them. We are currently operating at 8.1 miles per hour, system-wide. Our experience during the pandemic showed us how faster our buses can travel. That's why adding to and improving the existing network of bus lanes and busways is critical. We know that giving buses priority on our streets makes a huge distance in travel times. It is important to note that our 2022 strategy builds upon a number of previous achievements, including some big strides we have already made in 2021. And as you can see here, together with our partners at DOT, we have a lot to be proud of in 2021 alone, with a lot more work to be done. We know from our experience that improving the existing network of bus lanes and busways is the most effective way to increase bus speeds. Here are some good examples. Travel times on the M14 improved by 36% after the 14th Street busway opened, and in turn, ridership shot up by 24%. And just this past year, we opened Main Street, which helped increase speeds by up to 50%, and the 181st Street busway, which increased speeds by up to 32%. And our most recent busway on Jamaica Avenue has already increased speeds by up to 34%. While we've not yet seen the ridership increases that correlate to these improvements, we do anticipate similar results as we saw on 14th Street. And we know we need to replicate these successes throughout the city. So these are the outline of our 2022 strategies, which we'll go into further detail in the coming slides. The first part of our strategy is to expand bus priority and traffic enforcement. Busways and bus lanes are the best tools, but strong enforcement is necessary to get the best possible benefit. The commitments we see here are those announced in August. Up to 20 miles of new or upgraded bus lanes, including up to 5 new busways per year. Some of our priorities in 22 include Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, 21st Street in Queens, University Avenue in the Bronx, and Avenues A and D in Manhattan. And up to 750 new intersections with TSP, which provides an added boost, particularly when compared with a busway or a bus lane. Some areas that we are considering are the B41, the M101, the BX5, the Q66, 69, and 100, and other multiple routes, including routes along Forest Avenue in Staten Island. Again, enforcement is the key. And the good news is New York City is issuing more tickets than ever before. And next year we plan to add 300 more buses with onboard cameras. And finally, we are advocating for state legislation to prevent bus stop blocking and double parking along our bus routes. We also want to make sure our service design and planning meets the new post-pandemic world. The board will vote today to approve the implementation of the Bronx network redesign next summer, and we plan to publish a new draft plan for Queens in the first quarter of next year. And we are on track to kick off a pilot all-door boarding on up to 10 routes in the second quarter of next year. We are taking a proactive look at schedules to take full advantage of improvements we see from our bus priority projects, and we are committed to providing equity in our service and capital investment decisions. Let's not forget accessibility and customer engagement. Our local fleet is currently 100% wheelchair accessible, but there's still room for further improvement. DOT will improve the physical accessibility of 25 bus stops per year, and we will continue to improve the physical accessibility of our fleet, including wider ramps, additional flip seats on approximately 600 new buses in the coming year. And we are making improvements in customer information, adding up to 800 new buses with digital screens and automated passenger counters, which will provide real-time loading information to customers via the My MTA app. And we are committed to a zero-emissions fleet by 2040. We have 500 electric buses in the current capital plan, and will only buy zero-emission buses starting in 2028. And we have a lot of work to do in 2022 to get us where we need to go. Here is just some of the activities that this board will see. We will be awarding a consulting contract for a full fleet transition plan. beginning construction of charging infrastructure at 4 depots in partnership with the New York Power Authority, installing new power supply at East New York Depot in partnership with Con Edison, receiving first deliveries of 60 standard all-electric buses, and awarding 5 zero-emission bus test fleet from a brand-new vendor, upgrading 3 on-street zero-emission chargers in Manhattan and Williamsburg, awarding a design-build contract for Jamaica Bus Depot, awarding a joint fleet assessment study with Con Ed on lowering long-term costs, and awarding a third rail traction power charging feasibility study with NYSERDA. There is a lot of work ahead of us in 2022, and we're all excited about that. Lastly, when you peel back all the technology, ultimately our service is run by our people, our dedicated workforce. So engaging and empowering our staff is vital to our planned success. We are fully committed to supporting our staff with the knowledge and tools to help them reimagine service management and deliver excellent customer service. As we emerge from the pandemic and look toward the future, we know with full certainty that buses will be critical to a robust recovery for New York, and we must all do everything we can to encourage ridership growth. Together with our city partners, the advocate community, and elected officials who are always challenging us to do better, along with this board, we can get the bus priority we need to move those New Yorkers who need us most. And as Jano always reminds us, an investment in the New York bus system is an investment in equity. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig, and thank you, Hank and New York City DOT for the partnership that's enabled us to lay out such an ambitious agenda for 22. Comments from the board. Start with Mr. Glucksman.
Good morning. It all sounds great. What's going to happen with the new administration? Is this something that they will continue doing, or it's still up in the air?
Just out. What we outline here today, specifically Commissioner Glucksman, on the 2022 goals, are our joint goals, the MTA alongside New York City DOT, in regards to what we're going to deliver in 2022. Hoping as the new administration comes aboard, we can only build upon this, great start.
And Board Member Glucksman, I would say that the mayor-elect has already spoken out as very much a supporter of trying to speed buses for some of the same reasons we've talked about. So we're really optimistic and excited to work with the new administration.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? This is one of those presentations that's designed to let us dig in together on a bigger issue. If there are any other questions or thoughts or directions from the board for follow-up, we're happy to take them now. Okay. But as the thoughts come to you, please share them, because this is going to be something we're going to spend a lot of time on together in the next year and years to come, because it's obviously front burner. With that, let me turn to the fair promotions issue. As you know, members of the board working group on fair strategies, together with MTA staff, have met over several weeks to develop temporary fair promotions. Chief Customer Officer Sarah Myers here to share details. Sarah.
Thanks, Jano. Okay. So I am thrilled with my slides, hopefully, to be presenting the great work of the board fair working group. We're proposing launching 4 pilots to meet our customers where they are today. We want to win our customers back because public transit is good for them, it's also good for the region, and it's good for the planet. The fare pilots we are launching are more affordable, more flexible, and more fair than any fare products we've designed in a long time. And also, very importantly, they were approved by Jay and Bob, so thank you. So following a lot of great discussion, the board has recommended and introducing a new ticket, a 20-trip ticket to the railroads, available on e-TIX, with the added bonus of 20% off peak fares. We're also proposing adding an additional 10% off monthly passes and expanding City Ticket to weekday off-peak. as you guys know, City Ticket is only available right now on the weekends. So let's dive into each one of these more in depth. For those not ready to return to our monthly ticket program, the new 20-trip ticket to and from Zone 1 will have a 60-day validity period, which we purposefully expanded to make sure that those traveling 2 or 3 days a week would benefit fully from the 20-trip ticket. This will also encourage e-TIC's growth and ease the transition back to peak fares if the board chooses to do so, effective 2/25. That's the plan. As we all know, we've seen a significant decrease in monthly pass purchases, and we're here to say we want those railroad customers back by offering an additional 10% off already discounted monthly fares. So now, we are offering 58% to 71% discounts off one-way peak fares, depending on the zones of travel. This enormous discount will also help ease the transition back to peak fares for our customers, and this will also be effective 2/25 to allow our customers to buy those monthly fares in the appropriate time. Okay, my personal favorite, I know I shouldn't say that, but I'm going to. The City Ticket expansion, allowing travel on Long Island Railroad and Metro North within New York City on weekdays off-peak for only $5. Again, $5 travel within the city zone. It's valid for use on the day of purchase, and it also provides additional, more affordable, and faster commutes for those in New York City. It makes great use of existing empty capacity on trains without stressing the network. It also encourages off-peak travel, which we have been wanting to do for a very long time. Next, we'll talk about weekly fare capping, which is now available thanks to Omni. Our Omni customers will be automatically upgraded to unlimited rides each weekly period, beginning Monday to Sunday, and after 12 full fare rides, all rides will then be free. It works with any Omni-compatible payment method. So if you have a smartphone, you can use that. If you would like to use an Omni card, it is now available at many retail locations. You can find those retail locations on the Omni website, available in all 5 boroughs. No Omni account is required to use fare capping, but if you would like to track how many times you've used Omni within that Monday to Sunday period, you can log in and see how many times. For me personally, I don't keep track, so this will be a really helpful feature that's available on the Omni website. Again, omni.info. It eliminates the guesswork and financial risk of choosing between weekly unlimited and pay-per-ride options. It will encourage infrequent riders to ride more, and it also will encourage, we hope, Omni growth. We're targeting an effective date of February 28th, which is that Monday, to begin that Monday to Sunday time period. We know that the fare capping is going to be very new for our customers, and we're going to make sure to have help desks available at certain stations the week before we offer this, along with various help desks. We'll advertise them on social, put them on our website, and make sure that people understand how Omni works and how fare capping works, so that those that might not be as familiar with digital wallets, those that might not be as familiar with smartphones, can also access the smart card feature, which is available again at those retail locations. So we encourage all of you to just tap and go, paying $275 at a time, and then after 12 full rides, the rest of the rides are free. Omni customers will be automatically upgraded through our back-end system. You don't have to call us. You don't have to talk to a station agent. It will be automatically done. So I want to reiterate to all of our customers that these promotions are pilots. We'll be carefully looking at all the transactions, evaluating and adjusting as often as we can, rolling out additional products when we are technically able to do so. I'm happy to take questions, and then maybe we'll move for a vote.
Yeah, the 20-trip ticket, will that be considered a commutation ticket? Will that ticket be considered a commutation ticket for individual users?
I'm going to ask Jay and Mark maybe if they could answer that piece.
So there'll be individual trips similar to a 10-trip today that you can purchase, and you can use them within 60 days. So it's not a 30-day monthly commutation pass. You can use it individually over 60 days.
So I've shared a concern about, I'm supportive of the 20-trip and the 10-trip, but maybe inside of about 10 years ago, these were treated as commutation tickets designed for one rider that doesn't ride enough for weeklies or monthlies to benefit with a discount. We've changed that policy. So while we're doing this pilot, we may want to consider how we're going to apply the rules of a 20-trip ticket, because if we don't clarify them to what they are now, then all it is one big group ticket. And they're very, very difficult to validate in our system. They're very, very difficult to validate.
And since they'll be available on e-tix, it'll be on your personal app. So I think we have less concerns of it being shared like a paper ticket if they were to be printed. So that may
So
help.
what needs to be clarified, I guess, is what I'm saying is, can someone come on with 10 people and say, I got them all? That's, I don't believe that's how the ticket was designed. And I've been trying to share this, but I'm not sure who's listening.
Okay.
But it's an incredibly difficult ticket to validate. And if its intent is to treat regular riders that don't ride enough with a discount, otherwise it won't be used that way.
It's a good point. We ought to get into it. That's a new idea I just absorbed from you, so thank you. We'll get into that and give you a proper response. Board Member Khaleesi.
So Sarah, just a question. How do people with disabilities and AR customers, can they use any of this? And their overall participation? And I do
Right.
have one more question after that.
Sure. So they can participate through the reduced fare program. They can't participate yet in the Omni program. We're hoping to roll that out as soon as we can. That being said, the reduced fare program already has a best fare feature. It is available on the Easy Pay program. So if a reduced fare member of our community would like to take advantage of the capping program, which is available on the 30-day, they can tap, connecting their card to a connecting their Metro card to a credit card. They then are entitled to the monthly cap. So we have a lot of work to do. We all know that on the Omni side to get reduced fare up and running. There's a lot of teams focused on that. That being said, there are some features available right now to reduced fare users, but we need to do a lot more.
And to the Omni point, so Omni's been out for a while. People with disabilities are just doing some pilot program with 70 people, and we keep saying it's coming, and we rolled out a system without people with disabilities in mind. When will we have a definitive date? I'm not going to hold that to you now, but if you can come back, I'd like to see it sooner than later.
Understood.
Great.
Understood.
Thank you.
Board Member Mihalcis.
Just a thank you to David and Rhonda for chairing the committee, and for Neil and Kevin for what Sarah described as great discussion, lively discussion. I think we threw every single alternative at you guys, and you came back with good answers. And thank you to you and Laura and to Mark and everybody else who worked on this to help us get to a good place.
Board Member David Jones.
Yeah, a couple of things. I'd also like to join in the thanks to the staff. There was robust discussion. but I think it was very well prepared in terms of, well, this is one of the easiest committees I've been party to. I would like to raise again, obviously as we roll this out, the necessity of reemphasizing the Fair Fares program and making it clear that we're still not reaching what we project as capacity. We're at 258,000 people. We hope to get much higher than that. And Jano and I have been talking, and my staff have been talking about coming to a city poverty rate, which the Bloomberg administration actually pioneered, which would bring nearly 1 million people eligible. Obviously, that would be of enormous help, particularly to essential workers. So I hope as we look at some of these things, we, particularly with a new administration coming in, make sure that we integrate, obviously, the half-price fare available to people below poverty, to the new mechanisms we're talking about here. But again, thank you to the staff for really an extraordinary presentation to the committee.
Board Member Zuckerman.
Thank you, Jano. So I also want to thank the team. It was a great discussion, thoughtful points, and I think most importantly, the riding public should know the MTA is trying to make it easier for you to ride. Obviously, I represent a community in Metro North, so for those in the Metro North territory, we want you to come back to the city. It is busy here. You can't get a ticket to a Broadway show. You can't get a restaurant reservation. I am telling you, things are happening in New York. Your office may not be at work all the time, but the rest of us are having a good time here in the city. So come in, and we're trying to make it easier for you, both those of you who are a little averse, so you've got the 20 trip. For those of you who are a little less averse, we've got the monthly further discount, which is great. But I will say one other thing, which is necessary in my role on this board, which is this is a help, but we've got a long way to go, and I'm going to tie a couple other things together briefly. Bob, in his tenure, has helped me work very hard over the many years I've been on this board to flatten the pricing for those of us on the further end of the system. Whether it's Dutchess or Suffolk or Putnam counties, we're paying almost $500 a month, some places more than $500 a month to commute in. That has been almost a direct relationship between distance and fares. It has been a little bit better in each fare increase. We've tried to cap the dollar amount and limit the increase. And we've gotten a little more fare, but it's a lot. And one of the public speakers, one of the disabled public speakers, was complaining about that she had spent $400 on cabs. Well, madam, $400. I wish I could pay $400 to commute in from Putnam County. We're paying more than that a month, and so with no denigration to the benefits of Access-a-Ride, I am telling you that those on the furthest ends of this system are paying an enormous amount of money, including parking, including their monthly fare, including their car itself, and so it is a burden. We all have different burdens. New York City income tax is a burden, but we all have different burdens, and I'd like to figure out over time how the MTA can lessen the burden of those further end of the system. But that's a bigger issue. The good news is in the short term, Chair Lieber and Sarah Meyer and the rest of the team have made it easier. So come back in the city, have a good time.
All right, you officially are designated our board pitchman after that excellent presentation.
I'm sorry, can I just add one thing?
Andrew's waiting. Please go ahead.
Yes, no, I forgot to thank Andrew and Rob Mojica, who are also on the task force. I apologize.
All right. So by way of thanking Andrew, I will now recognize him.
Thank you. And I would also echo thanks to all the staff for all of their assistance during the many meetings we had discussing the fares. I have a lot to say about these. I think they're great for helping bring riders back. I think the 20-trip commuter fare is going to really go a long way to bring Long Island and Metro North riders back who have a different kind of commuting schedule now. Hopefully they'll all come back to the monthly when things really return to normal. As far as the city ticket part, obviously I'm happy to see that expand, but I wish it were Freedom Ticket, obviously. And Craig was talking about equanimity among riders. Well, we have a lot of neighborhoods where there is no subway service, but the commuter trains do pass through those neighborhoods, but they are priced at a rate that many neighborhood residents cannot afford. And in the Bronx, for instance, Riverdale, Spuyten Duyvil, and Morris Heights, University Heights, and when Penn Access comes, Co-op City, Morris Park, and Parkchester Van Ness, 3 of the 4 new stations are going to be far from subways. In Queens, Little Neck, Douglaston, Bayside, Auburndale, Broadway, and Murray Hill are far from subways. Freedom Ticket would get people on. Hopefully they would upgrade their ticket to a weekly like they have done on Atlantic Ticket. And freely transferring amongst the parts of the MTA means it's far less likely that you're going to bring a car into the city. And I think it makes the system more attractive. I think it makes for more discretionary trips. And I hope that what we're talking about passing today is the first step towards getting to that really important part where people consider all parts of the MTA vital and essential to wherever they live. And that's my pitch, but I think this is a great start.
Thank you so much. Board Member Glucksman.
Thank you. I'm not going to spend time, thanks to the staff and everyone and the fellow board members who worked on this project. We had a very successful PCAC press event yesterday up in the Bronx to advocate for everything that Andrew has mentioned, and I hope that it will see fruition. I understand there are reasons for it, that the west of Hudson, I represent 6 counties, and 2 of my counties, Rockland and Orange, are not able at this time to participate in this benefit of the program. I hope that whatever issues between NJ Transit and the MTA can get resolved soon so that our people can get the same benefit. Thank you.
Good point.
Jano, could I just ask one question which I did not ask? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Larry. Is City Ticket going to be available on e-tix, which will help it become much more successful?
That's the plan.
Thank you.
All right, we've answered yes to at least one of Andrew's questions. Board Member Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me echo first what Hayda said. I want to congratulate and thank everybody that was involved with putting together these pilot programs. I think it's a great jumping off point and a great first start. To echo what Neil said as well, for at least 4 years, there's been a lot of robust discussion and dialogue about the whole fare structure, and to find ways to create more equity, not just with the New York City transit system, but with our commuter rail system, whether you're a daily, everyday user or that casual off-peak user. And I want to thank and congratulate you, Mr. Chairman, for putting together the group. And I think, my suggestion would be to either keep this group intact, add other people that wish to join. I think this is a great opportunity while you're monitoring the pilots to continue the dialogue, the thinking, the research, right, to on a going forward basis, because you're going to at some point have to come back and take up the issue of fares, to look at seeing the different opportunities and possibilities to create a fairer, more equitable system. Again, whether you're using New York City Transit or the commuter rails. And the last thing, and Neil's been a good advocate on this thing too, as Victor is a great advocate on accessibility and discounts for the disabled, is that commuter riders, especially the daily commuter riders, not only are they challenged with the cost of the ticket, they're also challenged with the cost of parking before they get on the train. So they're getting hit twice. So parking goes up, the train goes up, everything goes up. So it becomes somewhat of a hardship. So again, congratulations to the working team for putting this together. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of this in terms of attracting new ridership. But I hope that you'll use this as an opportunity for a long-term master plan and looking at the whole fare structure and fare system and see what interesting and innovative things you can come up with that will continue to attract more riders, but also keep the ones we have and not have them leave the system.
It's an excellent point, and we have this is a 4-month pilot. We're going to need to keep engaging on a regular basis to see how it's going and what actions we would take at the end. So I think I appreciate the point. Board Member Brinkman was going to be recognized.
Yes, I just want to follow up on what Andrew had said earlier and what Larry had said. It's a great start, but since they are pilots, I think once we get to the appropriate time, be it 6 months down the road, 7 months down the road, I would reconvene this committee and look at what we've done, and then at that time, maybe look at the possibility of maybe implementing Freedom Ticket if that's appropriate, if the numbers work at that time. And that's all I want to say.
Okay. Board Member Herman.
I'd like to thank the team, and I agree with David, a great working group and the easiest committee I've ever been on, because the staff did a lot of work and they took back our suggestions and came back, even though I think we might have frustrated them a little bit. But I'd also say that what's key to this is communicate to our ridership. If we don't make sure they understand by 225 what is available to them and after 225, then we won't reap the benefits of these changes.
Great point. Very much appreciated. Any further thoughts from the board before we move on? Sarah, would you like to do the formal proposal?
I would. So today we seek board approval to launch 4 temporary fare promotions pertaining to travel on New York City Transit, the MTA Bus Company, Long Island Railroad, Staten Island Railway, Metro North Railroad, as described in my earlier remarks and summarized in the board materials provided for today's meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. I will make the motion. May I have a second? David. All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you to everybody. And we are going to keep going. I love that idea. We're going to give I hope that we will give within a month or so an update to the committee on how this is being implemented, bearing in mind Board Member Herman's comments about communication. Before I turn the floor to Jamie Torres Springer to introduce Penn Access, I want to welcome a special guest to make comments remotely. That's Bronx Borough President Ruben Diaz. President Diaz, are you hearing us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, everyone.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chair, how are you? Thank you for this opportunity. Can I go now, or
please go ahead? We're all ready to hear from you.
First of all, let me just wish everyone there happy holidays, and I want to thank you all for your service to not only the city but to all the commuters in the tri-state area. I'm ecstatic about this announcement, Mr. Chair. I think that Santa Claus came early this year in the form of Senator Chuck Schumer, and we want to thank him for his focus, his commitment to Penn Access. It helps us tremendously with the efforts, as you know. You've been here every step of the way with us in the Bronx. The efforts that we have given towards this effort that's been kicked around for decades, and it's finally been coming to fruition with the 4 Metro North stations. This is a way where we can have folks from the Bronx either go to Connecticut or into Manhattan, or vice versa. People come to the Bronx and cut and shave off that commuter time by in some cases 50 minutes, if not more. That's important because while we speak of fares, while we speak of funding and money, the most valuable thing in the world is time. And for many folks to be on their way to and from work or to and from school with for an extra hour or 2 or 3 hours a day, that's time that's taken away from their lives and their families. And this access expansion is going to be able to address this sooner rather than later. Also, it creates jobs. You all know that since I've been the borough president, pre-pandemic, we were able to get unemployment down to under 5%. We were up over 14%. We put over 100,000 more Bronxites to work. And so when you look at the FAR, when you look at what we can do around at least 3 of the 4 Metro North stations, This will continue to create those opportunities for Bronxites and people beyond. I do want to say that on a different note, I know it may not be germane, but I have to thank you and all of the folks from MTA and from New York City Transit for how you've treated my borough and how you treated the leadership of my borough on the bus redesign. You guys have been incredible, and I want to go on record and say publicly that I admire all of the efforts that you've given to hear the community out and also to address their concerns and pivot where you need it to be. That's the way that government should work. That's the way that services should work. And you need to hear that publicly. And then lastly, let's go back to Penn Station Access. I'm one who I love the way this pilot program that you guys just voted on. But in the famous words of that great philosopher, William Wallace, in the movie Braveheart, I'm going to say freedom. And hopefully in the future, you guys can expand it to the freedom ticket. But thank you all. Mr. Chairman, you've been an amazing, amazing leader and showing how governance, how services should be. I applaud you and thank you and admire you for it. And I want to again wish everyone happy holidays. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the way you have comported yourself towards my borough on these issues. And we're so happy that Chuck Schumer and the U.S. Congress has come through with this funding for the Penn Station access so that we can finally see the 4 Metro North stations come to fruition.
Thank you so much. And we're so glad to have the Bronx Borough President be able to participate in this. He's been a passionate supporter from the beginning when this project really started to get traction the last couple of years. And in light of the fact that he's passing the baton, I'm just so glad that you were able to join us at what feels like a historic moment for the Bronx with the approval of this project. So on that note, Jamie, would you take us through the items for Penn Station?
Thank you, Chair. Board members, construction and development has 2 competitive procurement actions totaling $1.97 billion that are being brought directly to the board this morning. You should have all received copies. First, we're requesting approval to award a publicly advertised and competitively solicited contract for the design-build services for the Metro North Penn Station Access Project in the amount of $1.851 billion. As the chair described earlier, Penn Station Access will provide Metro North New Haven Line customers with service into and out of Penn Station via a vastly improved Amtrak Hellgate line, including through 4 new accessible stations in the East Bronx, introducing rail service and drastically reducing travel times for those neighborhoods just described that are much in need of these services. We will also, as part of this project, rehabilitate 4 bridges, add or improve 20 miles of track, add or improve interlockings, reconfigure Metro North's New Rochelle Yard, and modernize signal, power, and communication infrastructure. The project will improve reliability and on-time performance for Amtrak customers and prepare the Northeast Corridor for high-speed rail in the future. A 2-step procurement process was conducted for this design-build contract, first pre-qualifying 3 design-build teams and then issuing a request for proposals. A selection committee comprised of construction and development, Amtrak, and Metro North unanimously determined that a final proposal submitted by the Halmar International LLC Railworks joint venture provided the MTA with the best value as their proposal was the highest rated technically and offered the lowest cost. As part of this action, C&D is also requesting approval to enter into a design-build phase and cost-share agreement for the project with Amtrak. Amtrak will be responsible for providing track outages and the forces to support those outages, and for delay costs attributable to failure to provide those outages up to a cap. Amtrak has also agreed to fund a percentage of total project costs, which based on the current budget equals approximately $500 million. Amtrak will work with the MTA to seek the maximum federal contributions to fund the cost of this project and the East River Tunnel rehabilitation programs, as has been described. Also, as part of this first action, Construction and Development is requesting authorization to add this project to the owner-controlled insurance bridge program. and to extend the term of the OSIP Bridge program from 4 years to 6 years to cover the full duration of the project. The second item we're requesting board approval for related to Penn Access is to award a publicly advertised and competitively solicited contract for project management services for Penn Access for the not-to-exceed amount of $116.6 million. A one-step procurement process was conducted for this contract consistent with Federal Brooks Act requirements to preserve the MTA's ability to use federal funding for this contract. Of 3 proposals received, a selection committee comprised of Construction and Development and Metro North determined that the proposal from a joint venture of WSP USA Incorporated and Atlas ATC Engineering Incorporated was the highest ranked and deemed to be the most technically qualified, and therefore we are recommending award to that joint venture. These 2 items are submitted for your consideration and your vote.
I will passionately and enthusiastically make the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? Thank you. The items carry. Please. Please.
Sorry, one name hasn't been mentioned. I was thrilled that Borough President Diaz was here, but I was texting a few minutes ago with one of our former interim chairs, vice chairs, board members, transit committee member, and I would say the intellectual godfather, if emotional godfather as well of this, which is Freddie Ferrer, also Bronx Borough President. And I thought Freddie's leadership when I was on this board was steady, similar to Bob in many ways, steady, kind. We had drinks, coffee many times. He doesn't know me from Adam and didn't have to extend to those courtesies, but he taught me a lot on this board. And I think a legacy of these stations, his advocacy, gentle but firm, was steady and very clear for a long time. And so while he's been off this board for a couple of years, I see Freddie's fingerprints all over this plan and remember him fondly for that. So I don't know if he's listening out there, but Freddie, thank you very much for your leadership. As someone on this board who's actually born in the Bronx, I'm pretty excited to see that that part of the world gets some attention. So thank you.
And I'm so glad that you made the point. This was an oversight on my part. I called Freddie 2 days ago to let him know we had gotten to this point because he, as you said, he was a passionate advocate of this project for many, many years. And it will always bear the imprint of, our old colleague, Freddie Ferrer. This project is really a testament to him in so many ways. So thank you, Neil, for reminding us of that. We have accomplished the business related to Penn Access, and thank you again. Switching gears, we'll hear from C&D Vice President Senior Vice President Tim Mulligan, who will introduce a proposed capital plan amendment for the board's consideration. Tim.
Construction Development has an additional item being brought to the board today. You've all previously received a copy of the staff summary in your materials. The item requests approval to amend the 2020 to 24 MTA capital program plan to increase the current capital program by $535 million to $55.334 billion and the CPRB portion to $52.007 billion. To facilitate the award of Penn Station access by increasing the project budget by $921 million, as well as recognition of additional federal grant revenues for Long Island Railroad, Connecticut contributions to Metro North Railroad, and several other net zero adjustments to the plan for administrative purposes and to support ongoing capital work. The additional funding for Penn Access is primarily sourced by the $500 million Amtrak contribution that has been agreed to. Additionally, $100 million worth of savings from the flagship mega project Third Track and Long Island Railroad, and $321 million worth of loans from other capital projects that will not need to be fully funded until the latter portion of the program. This item is being submitted for your consideration and vote.
Any discussion, Mr. Albert?
Just a question, Tim. Does this Penn Access plan and this additional money anticipate any stations in Queens part of the line?
No, this amendment provides for the Penn Station Access Plan with the 4 new stations
Right.
in the eastern Bronx.
But
Those
nothing,
are the
I mean,
only
there's been
4
some
additional
discussion
stations.
of a possible Queen Station, but this doesn't allow for anything.
Andrew, we just, just in candor to you, we just awarded the contract.
Right.
We're based on a specific design, and that's got 4 stations in the Bronx, so I don't want to mislead anybody. Okay. Any further discussion about the capital plan amendment proposal on the table? I'll make the motion. May I have a second? Mr. Schwartz has seconded. I'm learning the rituals because my general counsel spanked me last month. Any all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Thank you all. Next is the adoption of the 2022 budget and the 2022 to 25 financial plan. This is our last chance to say I'll turn it over to Chief Financial Officer Bob Ferran to provide the plan handler.
This is my opportunity to say I'm going to turn it over to the soon-to-be acting Chief Financial Officer. Go ahead.
Before I start the report, I wanted to say I may not have Bob's Southern charm and accent. However, I've had the pleasure of working with Bob for the last few years under his leadership in finance, and I wanted to personally thank you, Bob. On to business. We are seeking the adoption of the 22 final proposed budget and the 4-year financial plan, which includes the years 2022 to 2025, presented as the November plan last month. It includes approving the 2021 November forecast and plan adjustments and authorization of budget and plan adjustments, including MTA policy actions. In total, the cumulative impact of the changes since the July plan is a continued balanced budget through 2025. This balancing is only achieved with the receipt of $10.5 billion in federal aid from CARISA and ARPA, which is on top of the $4 billion received and fully expended in 2020 from the CARES Act. The implementation of the fare and toll increases proposed for mid-22, 23, and 25, and the use of $1.4 billion in deficit borrowing proceeds. As we've discussed previously, the federal funds mask the structural imbalance in the MTA finances. It is recommended that the board adopt the 22 final proposed budget and 4-year financial plan, which includes approving the 21 November forecast plan adjustments. The approval of this plan will supersede prior board approvals for this period. It authorizes staff under the guidance and direction of the chair, CEO, chief financial officer, or their designees to take actions to implement the policy actions set forth in the plan. It authorizes technical adjustments to MTA budgets and forecasts of a non-material nature in the 22 February plan, authorizes adjustments of MTA budgets and forecasts to reflect labor settlements approved from time to time by the board. It authorizes staff under the guidance and direction of the chair, CEO, the CFO, or their designees, including the MTA treasurer, to take additional budget and cash management actions, as has been done in past budgets, to draw down on general reserve and/or make budget adjustments to respond to unexpected expenses or revenue subsidy shortfalls, and other actions including, bear with me, there's only a few more items, advance of bridges and tunnels operating surplus for the years 2021 and 22, use of MTA MR2 corporate account monies to stabilize cash flow requirements, provided they are repaid prior to end of the fiscal year in which they are made, use of payroll mobility tax and replacement funds, and MTA aid. The board is requested to authorize staff to enter into interagency loan agreements among the MTA and its affiliates and subsidiaries. Any such interagency loans be repaid no later than the end of the next succeeding calendar year. Use of stabilization reserve to stabilize MTA agency cash flow requirements. The treasurer shall also use such funds from time to time as may be necessary or convenient to timely make debt service payments on MTA bonds for prompt payment of contractual obligations. It is recommended that the board adopt the final proposed 22 budget and the 4-year financial plan.
Okay, I'll take a motion. Mr. Schwartz.
Well, as chair of the finance committee, I'll second your motion.
All right, I'll make the motion. I have a second. Is there any discussion or commentary? Mr. Lynn?
Thank you, Jano. First, let me telescope a number of different comments together. Bob, I also just want to express my great appreciation for all the work you've done. I think there are many times when you may have been the only person ever answering my emails and responding to my phone calls, so I appreciate the constant attention to the issues that I raised and the terrific informative responses I got. Jano, I want to congratulate you on an intensity and vibrance to this meeting that I think has been unique. It is spectacular, the level of excitement that is going on, whether it be the Bronx redesign, the Commissioner Gutton speaking about working with transportation, the presentation by Sarah of the work of the committee, things like the subway maps that are award-winning, internationally award-winning, is terrific, and the Fair Fares work that David has been doing is terrific, and the Bronx Borough President, speaking of his excitement, is all stuff that I think leads to a vibrancy that I haven't seen in the 2.5 years that I've been here, spectacularly new and important. I also think the vibrancy of the board committee should be recognized, because a number of us said over the last year or so that we really highly advocated the idea of board involvement in separate committees, and our thought that it could really produce some tremendously important material, and I think it was demonstrated by the board committee. So I go into a topic now that has been one that I'm sure many people say not again, but it's a subject that my fellow board chairman and I, Vinny Tessitore, have spoken about any number of times, which is the whole fear of the COVID and what's going on and what's taking place. And it's impossible not to recognize all the articles of the new variant being now perhaps most dominant in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut, and within a couple of weeks. Already, I think, at 13% coming from nowhere. The breakout of the new variant at Cornell are things that I think should be of a concern, and I want to not get to the discussion, but try and draw on what I think is the importance of the board committee meeting. And I would like to heartily recommend that you establish a separate board COVID committee that has union representation, the union board members, along with some of us who have been so interested in this subject, to discuss with staff and to bring in expertise to say whether or not they recommend we need some mid-course corrections or not, and maybe doing exactly what we should be doing. But I think, as we all know, the financial plan is totally dependent on riders coming back. The federal dollars are not going to be recurring. Riders will be recurring. And unless we lick the issue of the variant and what COVID can do to the city's economy, and heading into the winter and the cold months, we have an extraordinarily serious problem that we're facing. People talk about, and people came and spoke about respect for MTA employees. Nothing shows more respect for MTA employees than the desire to keep them safe. And I think that Vinny and I come at the same problem from different ends, but we're both, our intention is to show respect for the workers and to make sure that we adopt the best things possible to make them safe. So I would advocate, rather than continuing a public debate over the subject, let's get a vibrant committee going. Let's bring in some expertise to talk to that committee. Let's get the input. Let's hear the staff ideas. Let's hear the union board member ideas, and let us exchange in that context. And let's do it immediately. because I think everyone's concern is we are days away from an explosion of the next takeoff of the virus. So I'd like to advocate that. Rather than talking about the $100 million in the budget for testing, let's talk about within the committee of whether this makes the most sense, what makes the most sense, and how to move forward. Thanks.
This is counterintuitive thing.
You'd be in two places at once, aren't you, right there?
I know. I
That's amazing.
I have
You got 2 votes.
I have
Sorry.
caretaking responsibilities in the early mornings, and so I need to participate remotely. Okay. All right. So, but I'm glad that you're so astute. The thing, what I would like to add to Bob's comments is that in my other hat as Commissioner for the Aging, I am very concerned about the spread of this virus. And I'm also concerned, which includes the safety of older adults who ride the subway, as well as your our employee force who is over the age of 60. So it is something that we really need to look at, and I welcome having a committee to look at that, not as a public debate, but as a real committee that can start looking at solutions and to address this dire situation. You've gone too far, Jano. You've done too much with your team for us to have a setback. And if in conversations with our very dedicated labor force, I think that we can come up with some solutions to address this. But we cannot expose neither our ridership nor our employees. So.
Okay, we're still on, I welcome discussions, but we're still on the financial plan.
Well, that's
Welcome
part
on
of it.
Any further
I
discussion
support-
on the financial plan? Mr. Jones?
Go ahead.
I know I'm off the subject as well, but I would like to talk with Bob Lynn and Lorraine. I was shocked to see the latest statistics of upstate, just dramatic increases in the problems of infection. So I too am watching Cornell close down. Obviously, I'm getting worried because my daughter, who's in her 3rd trimester, is riding the subway regularly. So I have a personal risk here. But I'd like to do something that gets the best in class of medical advice on what other parts of the country are doing, what other nations are doing as they confront a workforce of the scale we have, but ridership that is in 5 million, 6 million. I think we have to do a lot more work here, but I recognize, and I heard my fellows in the union movement, obviously we have to do this in collaboration with our union members. And I would support that this is the way to start having that discussion.
I would just like to make clear that the idea of starting a discussion with the union is slightly not quite right, because the collective bargaining process on this issue has been intense and constant for, well more than a year. So I hear the comments, but I also just want to acknowledge that there have been intensely engaged discussions with the union, treating this as part of our collective bargaining relationship. Any other comments, Mr. Tessitore, on the financial plan, of course?
Yeah, no, not on the financial plan. I would have left it to the financial plan, but, once, twice, 3 times, now I must. Listen, the union leaders throughout the entire agency are living and breathing COVID. We are on the phones. We are dealing with our members. We are crying with family members. There's nobody that is working harder than union leaders across this agency to support the safety of our workers. And we also have an obligation to make sure that all the service that you guys demand and want is there for us. So while we're growing back and our union workforce are the ones that are bringing this place back, right? We want to make sure that their rights are protected. the unions aren't anti-vax. I mean, I think they've all made that very clear, but we have to juggle it. Jano shared a very good percentage this morning with the combination of the vaccination and testing, which is in the high 90s, right? So I don't know what more we can do other than say, quite frankly, I'm too busy for a working group to talk more about what I talked to Jano and Pat Warren and OHS and medical and everybody else every single day. I'll leave here and go on the train and deal with 15, 20 COVID cases, fighting to get people back to work, because it's not even easy to get people back to work because of requirements for negative tests, when people that test positive for COVID can test positive for COVID for a month. Yet I can't get people that want to come back to work, that are healthy, come back to work. Leave us be. We have it. We deal with them every single day on COVID. We'll deal with it. We'll be fine. And if we're not, we'll adjust.
Probably exhausted the intense focus on the financial plan. Board Member Mihalcis, you were warming up?
I was just going to say, let's move, and thank you for all your work as someone who's worked on budgets before. This has been very intense, and thank you both.
Okay, I think we have a motion on the floor on the financial plan. Any further? Yeah, we have, and it's been seconded. And all in favor? Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Okay, we now have, there's another longish process that we need to go through on the family benefits program, but I'm pleased to welcome for the first time to the table our new Chief Administrative Officer, Lizette Camillo. Lizette.
Good afternoon, everyone. In April 2020, the MTA Board unanimously ratified an agreement creating the MTA's first-in-the-nation COVID-19 Family Benefits Program, which provides a payment of $500,000 to the spouse, beneficiary, or estate of any employee in active service whose death was preceded by an unresolved COVID-19 infection. Under the program, the MTA also provides medical coverage for 3 years to the deceased's employee's spouse and dependent children to the age of 26. The initial agreement to provide these benefits had a 1-year term and expired on April 13, 2021. In April 2021, the MTA Board agreed to an extension of the agreement to provide these benefits until August 31st, 2021, with the provision effective June 1st that benefits are not available in any instance where a deceased employee had not received a COVID-19 vaccine, despite it having been made available to them before onset of infection. In September 2021, the Board prospectively approved the extension of the earlier agreements through December 31st, 2021. The 3-month extension agreement recommended, which is described in the current staff summary, includes a provision that the benefits are not available in any instance where a deceased employee is not fully vaccinated consistent with the current CDC guidelines, which is 2 weeks after the second dose in a 2-dose series or 2 weeks after a single-dose vaccine. It is recommended that the MTA Board prospectively approve the extension of the earlier agreements through March 31st, 2022, with the full vaccination provision just described, and authorize the chair or his designee to execute such agreements without further approval on the same terms with any certified representatives of the MTA employees which have not yet executed such agreements. Further, the chair would be authorized to extend the benefits to the MTA's non-represented workforce under the same terms. So I submit this for the board's consideration and vote.
Is there a motion? Motion. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Thank you. The family benefit extension is approved. Now we turn to regular board business. I know that we've had a long meeting so far, but we have a few other items to get through. We have to approve the minutes and hear from committee chairs. The minutes of the November board meeting and minutes of each committee have been distributed. Are there any corrections or omissions? Oh, okay.
Motion to approve.
The motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion is carried. The railroads met jointly this month, and Board Member Herman will deliver the report. Chair Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Lieber. The Long Island Railroad Committee and the Metro North Committee met jointly on Monday and report the following. There is one competitive item for construction and development being brought through the joint Metro North and Long Island Railroad Committee, totaling $31.3 million. The committee recommends this procurement, and I move it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Thank you. The items are approved. Ms. Herman.
This concludes the report of the Joint Long Island Railroad and Metro North Railroad Committee.
Thank you. Next is the Transit Bus Committee. Chair Mahaltzis.
Good afternoon, Chair Lieber. The New York City Transit and Bus Committee met on Monday and reports the following. There's one action for New York City Transit. The item seeks board approval to implement the Bronx local bus network redesign for local limited and select bus service. The committee recommends this action, and I move it.
Is there a second? All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? Thank you. The bus redesign is approved. Hader.
Yes. As a girl who also grew up in the Bronx. Anyway, there are two, and born in the Bronx. There were two competitive items from New York City Transit for a total amount of $110.7 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
May I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Thank you. The items are approved.
There are 8 items for construction and development, 1 non-competitive item for communication-based train control equipment, and 7 competitive items for a total of $550 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? The items are carried. The items carry. Hader.
This concludes the Transit Committee report.
Thank you. The B&T Committee report is from its chair, David Mack. Mr. Mack has departed.
You want me
Ms.
to?
Mahaltzis, will you act in his stead?
Okay. Mr. Chair, the Bridges and Tunnel Committee met on Monday and reported the following. There are 3 C&D procurement items being brought through the Bridges and Tunnel Committee for a total amount of $98.7 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Thank you. The items are approved. Next, the Committee on Finance, Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's one action item this month. The item seeks board authorization approval to issue 2022 MTA and TBTA new money bonds, bond anticipation notes, and refunding obligations, reimbursement resolutions for federal tax purposes. The committee recommends this item, and I move it.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? The action carries.
There are 13 competitive procurements for a proposed expenditure of $86.9 million. The committee recommends these procurements, and I move them.
May I have a second? All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The actions carry.
There is one request for the board to adopt a resolution and authorize the use of a request to procure a public-private partnership agreement for MTA construction and development. The committee did not take a formal vote on Monday. However, the committee is supportive of this item, and I move it.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Thank you. The item is approved.
There are 2 real estate action items for this month described on pages 186 through 189 of the board book distributed for this meeting. The committee recommends these real estate items, and I move them.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? Real estate items are carried.
This concludes the Finance Committee report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have one final set of... Mr. Glucksman.
Yes, I just didn't want to let this moment pass, and you maybe remember about a year or so ago, Commissioner Zuckerman, when we first approved the Penn Access, wanted to make sure that we didn't forget about the future, allowing Hudson Line trains to come eventually into Penn Station. So I just wanted to put that out there that we don't forget that.
The comment is totally out of order, but duly noted. The truth is breaking out. We have one final set of items to discuss today related to labor agreements. May I have a motion to convene an executive session to discuss matters regarding collective bargaining pursuant to Section 105, blop-de-blop of the New York State Public Officer Law? What, Section 105? I just skipped over some of the specifics. Section 105(1)(e). Also. Okay, I have all in favor of going to executive session. Thank you. It is approved. Okay, we're gonna knock this off. While in executive session, the board discussed matters related to collective bargaining agreements. We'll now vote on the collective bargaining agreements reached for various unions at Metro North and New York City Transit. May I have a motion to approve the agreements?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The agreements carry. Now may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you, and happy holidays to all. The meeting is adjourned. Just start off by saying I think this was one of the most consequential MTA board meetings in this organization's history. We did a package of fare incentives that are really tailored to support our core mission, which is bring riders back and support the city's recovery. We moved forward on one of the great mega projects that's been on the, people have been talking about for quite some time, which is to take the East Bronx and turn it from being a transit desert to being a transit-oriented community. There are 250,000 people who live near those 4 stations in the Bronx who are left out of our region in many ways because they don't have as much access to transportation as they should, and now they're going to be part of everything New York has to offer. And we did the Bronx bus redesign, which is the second of our borough-by-borough redesigns. It was done after a lot of discussion with the community in collaboration with the elected leaders, and it went through smoothly with the support of the elected leadership in the Bronx. And not to be forgotten, we took action on 26 ADA stations. So we are charging forward on the accessibility agenda. And I don't want to forget also that I was graced with one of our commenters with a new nickname, Harrison Ford, but a bigger nose and a smaller head. And that's always a milestone for any MTA chair. So those are my initial thoughts, and now I'm ready to take your questions.
All right. The record will reflect that is an MTA first. The history of the MTA. Mr. X has never gotten a shout out from the chair at one of these events.
I love my public commenters.
Here we go with Dave Porter of the Associated Press to start us off today. Dave, good afternoon. Hit the button and you're on the air.
Two questions related on subway security. Just to clarify, you want more police still, and you want them to deploy differently. And what mental health outreach is happening now? And if does there need to be more, and what's going on with that?
Good questions. Just for clarification's sake, we're not at this stage the calling for more NYPD cops. At this point, the NYPD, to their credit, did add cops to the Transit Bureau in the last year in response to some trends during the COVID era that were concerning to all of us. What we're asking for is that they put the cops in places where there is the most risk of crime, and where cops are in the best position to intervene when emergencies happen or when bad stuff is about to unfold, which is the platforms and the trains. And importantly, that those are the places where the riders are telling us they feel vulnerable, where they want to see visibly more police presence. And so we have talked numerous times with the Transit Bureau of the NYPD and with higher-ups at the NYPD and even with City Hall about using the supervision and management process that the PD has to make sure that cops are patrolling in areas where riders feel vulnerable and where there's likely to be stuff going on if it happens. So that has been our focus, and it's going to remain our focus. I think it'll make a difference. The issue of the mental health professionals is real. I think riders are telling us, and it's something we hear from both current riders and also the lapsed riders. Remember, we had 123,000 people respond to that survey we did. Is that there are there is more visible presence of people who are struggling with mental health issues in the system during COVID, and it continues, and that is. It can be alarming to people when you see somebody on a subway platform after a recent spate of high-profile incidents, and that person is engaging in irrational, erratic behavior. But we also know that there are people with mental health issues who are disproportionately involved in these track trespass episodes where people are getting on tracks, they're getting into the tunnels. In the suburbs, we've had episodes, more than a few episodes where people are on tracks and, unfortunately, some of them even have lost their lives. So we want more mental health professionals to work with the MTA and with the, with the law enforcement professionals to try to make sure these people get into treatment. Now, I will say this is something that the mayor-elect has talked about. So we are optimistic we're going to see action on this, but it is an area of concern, and we have been raising it with our partners in the city government.
All right, next up, we're going to go to the Zoom machine to Clayton Goose of the New York Daily News. Clayton, good afternoon.
Clayton, how's your health?
I'm okay. Thank you, Jano, and thank you for taking my questions remotely. I wanted to ask on two things today. The first is on vaccinations, second on CPRP, but I'll ask on just a couple on vaccination first. Specifically, wanted to ask you about the fact that MTA Construction and Design has the highest vaccination rate in the agency. It's over 90% with at least one dose. You led that sub-agency during a majority of the year. Can you break down what went right with that vaccination effort and why you think other sub-agencies have not been able to mimic that success, at least in terms of rates? And then also along those lines, has the MTA considered for its workers what other government bodies in some other countries have implemented, which equates recovery from COVID to a vaccination, at least for a few months after that recovery? And I'd also just like to ask on CPRB after this.
Okay. What we did at MTA C&D was when vaccinations became available, we assigned a couple people, and they were just fantastic, to working the phones, to getting in touch with every employee, to making sure they took maximum advantage of the chance to get an appointment. Remember, this is a year ago when appointments were in high demand, and the MTA actually was able to provide preferential access to its workforce. So we worked the phones hard. The difference between the MTA C&D workforce and the operating workforce is our people, even if they were working remotely, were reachable at their desks virtually all the time. The operating workforce, which is driving buses, driving trains, and operating in the system, is not sitting at a desk and operating a cell phone. In fact, in many cases, those the rules of those jobs prohibit you to be using your cell phone at that time. So it's a little harder to get in touch with people, and that I think has been some of the inhibition as we have made testing available and tap people on the shoulder to remind them that everybody needs to test who doesn't have a vaccination registered in the system. We're finding out that many people, and this was the case at MTA C&D, when we reach people, frequently they said, "Oh, I have a Vax card," but they didn't know how to go through the process of uploading. They didn't know how to get their Vax information on the system. So at MTA C&D, we got everybody on the phone, and so we were able to get those people uploaded quickly. That process is ongoing in the rest of the agency. We continue to touch people and find out they are vaxxed, and we just need to help them get the data on the system because not everybody's sitting around using their handheld all day. That's the fundamental difference, but it's one we're overcoming. And in the meantime, the success of the testing program is extraordinary. We have over 700 locations, and we had 14,000 people test last week out of, somewhere between 15 and 16,000 folks who were, who we don't have Vax records on. So total 97% compliance with Vax tests. So we're at 1.3% or 1.35% positivity rate. So while the rest of the world definitely is struggling with the rise in COVID, our numbers in the 1% range of positivity are still pretty strong. Now, obviously, we're watching it closely, but that's where we are, and it's pretty positive. Their second question was, have we thought about if somebody's had COVID, what do you say about how do you treat that COVID as a potential immunity equivalent to vaccine. That hasn't been what medical professionals have recommended to us at this point, so we haven't done it. But as I said, our program is moving forward effectively with Vaxxer tests in place. Your other question was about the CPRB.
Yeah, and then when do you, the CPRB never convened for the 2020-24 plan. When do you anticipate they will convene to approve the amendments you proposed today? And can work on pen access begin before the amendments are approved by the CPRB?
No, we need the CPRB action to award the contract once and for all. So, but we've talked to the executive chamber, and I'm confident that the members of the CPRB, which include a speaker who's from the Bronx, and a majority leader who's from just north of the Bronx in Yonkers, we're confident that they and the other members of the CPRB will be able to get together in short order. It's a different era of intergovernmental cooperation, as you may have noticed from our board meeting today. We had the city present. We worked things out on the buses with the city. We worked things out with Amtrak. This is something that Governor Hochul has made, kind of a signal of her era, which is there's a whole lot of intergovernmental cooperation that's picked up speed under her leadership, and the MTA reflects that.
And in front of you, tabloid to tabloid, we go to David Meyer with the New York Post. David.
In the tabloid tradition, I also have two questions. First, on Monday, Chief O'Reilly said that she would provide MTA board members at a later date the number of mask fines that NYPD has issued. I'm wondering, first of all, if she's provided that information, and second of all, given the fact that she said that there had been very few, are you concerned that the NYPD is potentially not giving out any mask fines?
So here's what I know. I don't know the answer to your question about how many mask fines they've given out. The MTA PD does give out mask fines, and I've worked with the leadership at MTA PD for them to be our police force to be more visible in especially the commuter railroad system in supporting the conductor's responsibility and their efforts to encourage mask compliance. I myself, and my security detail doesn't always love it, I give out a lot of masks on the trains. And, it's sometimes a complicated interaction, right? So I would welcome whatever the NYPD is willing to do. But it's not just about mask compliance. It's, as I said, the whole, the range of issues that affect the sense of order, so that our ridership feels that they're in a place which is generally rule compliant. New York, the subway system is where a lot of people form their impressions of this community in a positive way. It's where New Yorkers come together in a small space with lots of different kinds of people, with lots of different kinds of cultures and values, and we all get along. Part of that is making people feel like it's basically a place where people are playing by the same rules. So we need masking. We need people not to be, smoking on the trains, and other behaviors that make people uneasy and feel less secure. Coming back to mass transit, it's especially important when we're trying to win our riders back to support the city.
Right. So to my question, are you concerned that NYPD has potentially not handed out any mask fines?
I am. As I've told you, I am urging NYPD to be active in joining forces with us to enforce all kinds of rules of behavior in the system. Mask compliance is one of them. They don't need to get, I'm not counting the number of summonses. I don't know the answer to the question. I'm not counting the number of summonses. I am counting the number of times that they tap somebody on the shoulder and encourage them. The MTA, it's not a secret, has given out literally millions of masks. We give out millions of masks to try to make compliance. We need our partners in the law enforcement side of the equation to support that effort.
Got it. And my second question is bus redesign related. I'm wondering, maybe Craig, you can answer this, or someone else. How many bus stops were eliminated in the original plan versus the updated plan, and whether you all have a sense of how much bus speeds will increase as a result of this redesign?
I think my recollection is that we eliminated about 20% of the original bus stops. I don't have the number in my head.
We haven't set any goals, but we do know that, well-enforced bus priority, you've seen what we said today in the presentations, and we know that DOT has been doing a lot of work in the Bronx ahead of our redesign implementation next summer. So, we're awfully optimistic that our Bronx customers will see some much improved service with the redesign.
And was that 20% in the plan, the pre-COVID version versus, and how many is it from this? You know what I'm saying? Like you took community feedback. How did that change?
Actually, the pre-COVID version versus the post-COVID version didn't really have to do with as much bus stops. The one thing about the post-COVID version, we added back some bus stops. When we had our recent public meeting, we had some feedback around City Island specifically and some other routes. We've added some bus stops back. So if anything, it went in that direction.
Great, thanks.
All right, next up, right next door, Jose Martinez of the City, NYC. Jose.
Hi, Jano. Also in the tabloid tradition that David just established, two questions. First of all, with the addition of options to e-tickets like City Ticket, I should say, are you expecting to add Atlantic Ticket to that? And second question, how would you stack up Harrison Ford as a nickname versus the one we gave you in the press corps? Jano, it's a fair question, Lieber.
Well, thank you for tipping me off to some things that I probably will now resist saying. I'm going to ask Sarah Meyer to comment on the e-tics issue.
Hi, guys. So City Ticket currently is on e-tics. Atlantic Ticket is not. We're hoping to add Atlantic Ticket, but we're going to rename it City Ticket. So it's a little confusing. I have a lot of messaging to do, I have a lot of posters to put up. We are going to do everything we can to market this ticket. It's very meaningful for me personally. It's very meaningful for all of us, and we want to make sure as many people take advantage of it as possible.
I mean, what you're hearing is the core concept. The marketing has to reflect the idea that this is one vision, one initiative, which is to make sure that New York City residents, people who are traveling within the city, get more out of the commuter rail system. We have an opportunity right now, in part because there is room on a lot of the trains that are coming into the city, maybe on going in the other direction as well. So we have that. It is time to see if we can really bring some people who may be in neighborhoods which, as our friend Andrew Albert said, don't have a ton of subway service but have commuter rail access. Make sure those people can benefit from faster commutes. Let's do it now while we have a little extra capacity on the train, test it out, and try to move forward aggressively, because it has been an issue that folks have been talking about for a long time. If you live in Southeast Queens and you're taking a subway, and you could be taking Long Island Railroad, you might be able to save a lot of time for your family and for other things if you're able to afford the commuter rail.
All right, completing the tabloid sweep, we're going to go back to Zoom with Kevin Dugan of AM New York. Kevin, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my question. I'm just going to follow up a little bit on the city ticket question, and then I'll have a separate topic as well that I'd like to ask about. Jana, can you've heard it from a lot of advocates today, including Bronx Borough President. They want the Freedom ticket, which is a bit more expansive than what you're proposing. What stopped you and the people working on these discounts from going all the way with having this flat $5, on off-peak regardless for all commuters within the city?
I think the concept is we're doing a pilot. That's all about testing things out. So we're trying to test out incrementally what we all think is an exciting option, which is to grow commuter railroad use by New York City residents. We're doing it with this expansion. The City Ticket was itself a step in that direction. We're taking another big step today, and we're going to examine the results and see if there's what's indicated, whether we can grow this and market it differently and position it differently and make it even more effective for as I said, the population of folks who inside the city who could benefit from more access to the commuter railroads. The other thing that's going on is, I will always keep urging our friends in the city government to think about new expansions of the Fair Fares program, because we could there's no reason that the city couldn't participate in making the commuter railroads more accessible and more affordable as well through visions like the Fair Fares program, which discounts rides in public transit for people of lower income levels. So that's another option that I think should be looked at from the city side in due course as well.
And then my second question is regarding the redesigns. This might be for Craig. You mentioned that the Queens redesign draft plan will come out first quarter of next year, I think you said. Do you still plan as part of that draft to axe a bunch of Queens routes? I know there was a controversy around that last time around, the Q32, 53, and 60. And then separately on the redesigns, will we also see like a draft plan for Brooklyn next year, or are you going to wait till Queens runs its course before publishing anything on that?
So in regards to the Queens redesign plan, during the pandemic, the team has been hard at work. I think it was over 11,000 comments that we had received back in Queens. As you remember, we were all over Queens listening to our customers. And what you're going to see is a totally redone draft plan in Queens. So, look forward to that. You're going to see something that's totally redone, as we've done with the Staten Island Express and now Bronx redesign. The core piece of redesign efforts is listening to our customers and other stakeholders, electeds, and you're going to see that with the Queens redesign. In regards to the Brooklyn redesign, we're also going to pick up those efforts. But again, as I said, we really value the outreach, the customer feedback, and in that regards, we're trying to balance out how much of that is, how many of those resources will be taken from Queens, needed in Brooklyn. So we'll have more to say in the coming year in that regard.
And I'll just add, Kevin, that there's no place that buses matter more than Queens because of the history of the city. It has 2.3 million people, but a lot less subway service than other parts of the city. So bus redesign, Queens, really important, and it deserves full attention in the months to come.
All right, staying with the Zoom machine, we've got Steve Burns standing by from CBS 880. Steve.
Thanks very much. One question for you, nothing to do with nicknames. Wanted to get a sense of how concerned the MTA is about Omicron in general. Saw a lot of, trepidation and concern from a lot of commissioners about the impact it could have both on riders and on employees. So I wanted to see if it's at all moving the MTA more in the direction of a mandate for employees. And in general, what kind of impact do you think it could have on ridership if we do see this really start to explode over the next few weeks?
Listen, it's probably not useful for a non-epidemiologist like me to speculate, but here's what we know so far, is that the mass transit system, all of the evidence from all around the world is that mass transit, when people are using masks, is not a vector of transmittal of COVID, full stop. And we've seen that again and again. It's been studied heavily in Asia and Europe. And we have confidence. Equally important, our passengers, because you're seeing the numbers of return to the subway system as it continues to grow. We hit a new record last Thursday, and Omicron wasn't exactly secret, although obviously, time passes and people's awareness develops. But we hit a subway record last Thursday. So we think that we are being successful in maintaining safety in the system. Our riders believe we are maintaining safety in the system. We are succeeding in keeping our workforce safe so that they can be there to put on service. You see that we reported that crew shortages have actually gone down as a factor in our ability to put on service. There's a lot of very creative efforts that have been made to accomplish that, and it continues to go down. So we're optimistic. That said, we're going to look to public health authorities to help us develop our policies and protocols as the pandemic continues wherever it's going.
All right, and back here, Michelle Kasky of Bloomberg News is standing by. Michelle, good afternoon.
Is this on? Okay. Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Thanks so much. So actually, I want to ask Bob Ferran a question. So
the man of the hour.
Yeah. So, okay. So, Bob, congratulations on retiring. And can you tell us what your future plans might be? And just, this is a big, this is a big change for the MTA. As you know, you've been here for a while. And, when I talk to the people that you guys owe money to, I mean, one of the things they say is, well, I mean, MTA always has its ups and downs and its challenges, but there are people who are working there like Bob Ferran who are right there in the thick of things and know what to do. So, what do you say to the market in terms of this change, this personnel change?
Well, we have a very deep bench, if you will. We have a lot of sharp professionals throughout the finance function, as well as in the operating side of the business. So it's not one person. I have been around for a long time. There's some institutional knowledge that I bring, but really we do have a lot of very, very good people. So I have no doubt that we won't miss a beat. We'll continue to provide the kind of service that the customers want, give the type of information that our investors want. So I think that will continue. For me, I have no plans right now. Spend more time with my wife, travel, and then see what opportunities come up. So, sure.
As somebody who spent the first part of my career participating from the Koch administration, city side in the MTA, the beginnings of the MTA capital program, let me tell you, there's nobody who has, the entire history of the capital program involves Bob Ferran. When it was started in the early to mid '80s, Bob was there as the banker, the municipal banking specialist who was putting together those initial bond offerings. And he then came inside some years later and became, our star in that. It would continue to be like the incredibly credible municipal bond profile. So, we just can't thank him enough. And obviously, we're all celebrating him, and we're not going to stop.
All right, next we're going back to Zoom with Lorena Mongelli of Newsday. Lorena, you're up.
Oh, hi. I just had a broader question about how much of the agency's operating revenue comes from fares.
It's historically, it's been roughly half. We'll give you the exact number, but that's why the pandemic was so dramatic, because in the early days of the pandemic, when ridership went down, it was 95% down on the commuter railroads and 90% down on subways. We were literally losing $200 million a week. We've come a long way back from that, but $200 million a week relative to budget. We've come a long, long way back from that. But we'll give you the exact numbers, Lorena, but it's historically been roughly half of our $16 billion budget.
Yeah, just for clarity, it's 38% on the fares and 12% on the tolls. That's the 50%.
Okay.
And it's dropped on the fare side since the pandemic.
Deputy Chief Financial Officer Minton says it's 38% on the fares and 12% on the tolls.
My source is actually the Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Jay Patel, who I asked that question, anticipating before we started. All right, now we go to Dave Colon there from Streets Blog. His being last is not a metaphor with his beloved Knicks, and we had Steph Curry last night. But
So,
he is ending us today.
but on an emotional note, I just want to acknowledge that Dave's hat has returned. Go ahead.
It's a new hat.
Yeah,
I had to get it from Denmark. And the Knicks are not in last place yet.
Yeah.
I had two questions also, Jano, despite not being from a tabloid. The first was, a lot of good vibes today at the meeting, a lot of smiles, retirement handshakes, and all that. I did see in the board books the projections for ridership in the financial plan for the subway says that we're going to have like 220 million fewer riders in 2025 than we had before the pandemic started, which I'm just curious, who are those people to you, and what does it mean for the future of the subway if you don't get those people back?
So Dave, I think those are not necessarily individuals who have, there'd be some people who've just left the mass transit system, but mostly it's people who are riding less frequently because the projections are that, hybrid work or versions of hybrid work are here to stay. So it may be somebody, that reduction in ridership may be attributable mostly to people, a fair number of people riding, coming to work, coming to offices 2-3 days a week rather than 5 days a week. So, but our relationship to those people, you said it correctly, is real, which is they are our customers. We are a $16 billion business that's lost half its customers, and we're fighting to get them back. We're fighting to get them back because we're hopefully financially rational, and we know how important that is to the MTA's long-term financial stability. But we're also fighting to get them back because the MTA is the essence of the New York business model, which you and folks at Street Blog advocate for, which is we are global, climate-friendly, emissions-efficient, mass transit dependent, and we operate in density, and we create economic value by bringing people together to use their brains to create value. So we are essential to the business model of New York. We are the special sauce that makes New York, New York. We couldn't put 4 million people together every weekday if the MTA and mass transit didn't exist. And we want our riders back because they're essential to that. If somebody leaves and all of a sudden lives far in a rural area, in a new greenfield development, they're going to be, contributing to global climate change because they may be, driving to an office park rather than to working in tandem with people in a dense, mass transit-rich, climate-efficient, friendly environment. That's what we're fighting for in addition to our own financial stability.
I mean, so on that financial stability, those 200 million rides, without how badly does the MTA need to get those back by some point?
Look, well, all I can tell you is what the financial plan acknowledges, and again, none of us has a perfect crystal ball right now, but so far the projections that we have been using have been more or less accurate. What the projections say is that, in 2025, our revenue is going to be down somewhere, 85, revenue will be down 10 to 15% somewhere based on lower ridership, and that we are adjusting to meet that need. Well, one of the ways that we are adjusting is we're starting to talk to our friends in elected office, in the legislature and so on, about the fact that mass transit should not be looked at as something where, you have to take all of your revenue off of the user, but it should be looked at a little bit more as an essential service like police and fire and sanitation. We proved that during COVID. There was nothing more essential to the MTA, to New York's survival during COVID than the fact that essential workers could get to hospitals and pharmacies and grocery stores and everything else because the MTA was there. And I think that what we've started to say is it's time for reconsideration of long-term recurring revenue to treat the MTA a little bit more like like an essential service, so all of the burden of the adjusted ridership scenario does not fall on the riders.
And then I know everybody's been asking you about the city ticket, freedom ticket situation. This is a pilot, so presumably you have goals or projections or different ways of looking at it. What is the MTA looking at as far as revenue or ridership goals to maybe then go forward and say, we are going to do something like the freedom ticket, which everybody was on you guys about?
I don't want to get ahead of myself. We don't have a specific targeted number that would be the turning point or the linchpin of us deciding to go even big. What we're trying to do is to find out whether the premise, which is a positive one, which is that we can provide more service to people who live in the city by using the capacity, the available capacity on the commuter railroads, whether that's going to be true, whether people will take advantage of it, and whether we will grow ridership on the commuter railroads and provide people with the extra service, whether that's, we find out that's what they want, whether they're voting with their feet or their tushies or however you would characterize ridership. And so we're going to take a look at the information that comes out, and then we'll take action as appropriate. That's the nature of a pilot.
All right, thanks, everybody. Two first today. Mr. X came up, and Tushies. We
Yeah,
got
all
two,
right.
two
Well,
first.
welcome to Brooklyn, Tim.
Thanks, Jano. Thanks, Jay,
Okay.
Craig, and happy trails, Bob.
Happy to our friends in the press and all the advocates who are still here. Happy holidays. Much good health.